Good evening and welcome to tonight's Audit and Governance Committee meeting. Welcome everybody. Welcome to a new member of the committee, Councillor Trent, and welcome to those substituting and those joining online. Please, can we have some apologies?
Thank you, Chair. Before I do that, I'll just read out the housekeeping notice. Please note this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair. For those in the room, please note if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point, which is in the front of this building, the car park in Bourne Avenue. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you. Item 1, apologies. Apologies have been received from Councillor Sarah Armstrong, Councillor Margaret Phipps, Councillor Mike Cox, the portfolio holder. I understand Councillor Vicky Slade is arriving shortly and Councillor John Beasley is joining us online. Item 2, substitute members. Councillor Simon Bull is here today for Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Councillor Bull. And before we go on, I just wanted to note that this will be our Chief Finance Officer, Adam Richard's last A&G meeting with BCP Council, as far as I'm aware, unless there's some sort of sudden meeting in very short future. The portfolio holder spoke at the full council, so I don't intend to repeat that, but I'm sure everyone will want to thank him for 40 years for Pool and BCP Council. I think through I think for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, I think it's an awful long time and a huge amount of experience. So we've appreciated as a committee your support to us, and in particular, I think your clarity of explanation, which will be very much missed. So thank you. Can I ask any councillors if you have any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other interests on any items on the agenda? No? Okay. Item number 4, confirmation of minutes. Do we have a mover and a seconder to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of January? Councillor Tarling to move.
Happy to second.
Do we have consensus for that? Thank you. Okay, item 4A on the action sheet. And this is just to remind ourselves, this was brought in as a kind of aid memoir for us as committee members, so we don't lose track of actions we've spoken for. Did anybody want to raise anything on that action tracker? We are doing our best to keep it up to date as we can. Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you. It's just a general point about the action sheet. Looking back through some of the minutes, I've noticed that there are occasionally statements which have implied actions contained within them. And I just would hope that we could record those actions and keep them on the action sheet until they're actually closed. And it doesn't apply to just audit and governance either. There are some implied actions from statements made at full council, for example, which quote questions that have been asked in this committee, which have not yet been actioned. And I can give you some examples of those if you wish. But I do think that when we look at statements, we really need to make sure that if there are implied actions there, that we cover them off in the action sheet and that we do close them down when they eventually get answered. There are a couple in particular from Mr. Gatrell. One was raised at full council where he talks about the lack of action, if you like, on behalf of this committee in answering a question that he'd asked I think it was the 24th of July last year. That has still not been answered, and a freedom of information apparently associated with it has also not been answered in time. And these are detailed but nevertheless quite substantial issues that he's raised, and I do feel that we need to keep a track on them, even if we're not actually progressing them ourselves, you know, but when the answers come in, they need to be cleared off in some proper formal way. And I think we're sort of missing a bit there. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, that's interesting. That's helpful. I mean, I do think so this is public statements where there is an assertion in the statement that there is an action due, and there isn't currently a mechanism for, there's no feedback loop for that. I mean, I think that that's an issue with public statements in general. I think that the fact that they're just sitting there and we're not allowed as a committee or as a full council to debate the public statements. So there is no way of providing a follow-up or responding to or adding additional information to. So I do know that the Constitution Review Working Group has this as an item coming up, so I might invite you to come along to that next working group meeting and contribute to that. And we do have a discussion at the next meeting of ANG on the forward plan for the year. And I do wonder if a possible item for a deep dive of the committee might be something around feedback loops with full council and with decisions made. That strikes me as something that might be a useful subject for a deep dive of the committee. So perhaps we can come back to that in that discussion. Do we have any other? Councillor Andrews.
Yes, thank you very much. On the forward plan, and I'm looking at particularly page 27 of the agenda. No, sorry. Move on from there. Well, Carter's Quay is mentioned. This is page 31, item 19, for an update. I think we're due to have an update on the situation at the next meeting. It does cross my mind, it's now 3 years since Inland Homes stopped building our 161 flats. And obviously, several weeks later, it was revealed that they'd gone bust. And obviously, it's a long time that we've been paying interest on the £15.5 million. So, you know, I really would like to look forward to the next meeting and some positive news. Thank you.
Yes, I'm aware that the officer is working at pace on that update to the committee, so it should come before very long. I would caution, though, that it is, as discussed, it's a backward-looking piece on how we got into the situation. Just to be clear on expectations, it's not going to be speaking to the current situation as that is live and ongoing. And I think we agreed that that was something for ONS to be looking at and the kind of an ongoing capacity. This is going to be a retrospective look, but yes, I think that will be a particularly interesting piece. Okay, unless any other items, we have, I have a few updates on it. One was that the Chair of Standards Committee was going to be coming to speak to us, and that is still being organised, but that looks like it's going to be on the 28th of May committee meeting due to diaries. And I also, one of the items on there is for me to talk to the chair of the Children's ONS committee about some sort of working together piece. And I will raise this when we discuss at the next meeting the forward plan for the year. It's a question of whether or not we want to do a piece of work where we work together, looking at that on some of the corporate risks around children. Okay, with that, let's move on to item number 5, public issues.
Thank you, Chair. We have 2 questions from Philip Gattrell on agenda item 6 and 1 question from Ian Redman on agenda item 10, which I will be reading on their behalf. So question 1 from Mr. Gattrell. Creditors. My 24th of July 2025 question to this committee and 10th of February 2026 statement to full council refer concerning council's failed judicial review when the decision upheld an ombudsman's report regarding injustice caused to a complainant. I was informed that because the Ombudsman's legal costs were under negotiation, they were not adjusted as a creditor in the 2024-25 draft accounts. This does not conform with the accounting tenet of prudence, where audit concepts of monetary materiality are not the criteria. Subsequently, £80,000 in Ombudsman's costs was confirmed, and that amount is included in a notified £214,722 borne by the council was recorded in my February 10th statement, excluding £2,489 estimated childcare charges and £200 for time and trouble reimbursable to the claimant. What is the final total cost to the council regarding this matter, and how much of the amount owing at 31st March 2025 has not been adjusted as a creditor in the revised 2024-25 accounts?
Thank you. The final cost to the council was £81,759.10, with this all charged to the 2025-26 financial year.
Question 2. The Oracle Fusion accounting system is not fully functional. Shortfalls, including human operational, unquestionably exist, evidenced by information received by me as indicated in previous public issues. A fixed assets module was previously added to integrate double entry control in place of vulnerable spreadsheets. The external auditor's documented experience with another client discloses major problems with Fusion modules, including, for example, certain fixed assets movements and their dysynchronicity in accounting years likewise reflected at this council. Questions: which accounting modules have not been fully implemented? Which specific fixed assets types remain reliant on spreadsheet records? Has a reconciled revenue and benefits accounting migration to the single Capita Cloud database been completed? For which future periods have cash flow forecasts been prepared, and are they reconciled with all revenue and capital projections for income and expenditure commencing with the latest annual accounting base? Which financial information is generated by Dynamics 365?
Thank you. For clarification, the council went live with Microsoft Dynamics 365 as its finance and HR system supplier in April 2023, having previously utilised Oracle Fusion. 1. There are currently 33 modules available across the finance and HR system. The majority of these modules have not been implemented as they are not applicable for a public sector organisation, as an example, stock management. 2. All fixed assets remain on spreadsheet records. 3. Yes, an accounting reconciliation was carried out for the new revenue and benefit system. 4. Cash flow forecasts are produced on a rolling 12-month basis, which are updated and reconciled daily for the latest actuals position. 5. Dynamics 365 is used for the general ledger, accounts payable and accounts receivable, but in a limited form.
And question from Mr. Ian Redman. Financial regulations exist to safeguard public funds. When they are breached, what formal accountability mechanisms are triggered? Further, can the council confirm whether any senior officers have been subject to those mechanisms in the past 3 years? For example, the regulations require any proposed concession contract, regardless of value, to be agreed with and managed by PCM. In 2025, a concession at Hengetsbury Head Visitor Centre was arranged solely by the Parks team without contacting PCM. In the Smart Growth Associates case, a purchase order for £18,500 was approved by a senior officer without a procurement decision record. There appears to be no record explaining why Smart Growth Associates were selected. In these cases, does the council consider that the financial regulations were breached? If not, please explain the basis for that conclusion. If they constitute breaches, what reporting mechanisms apply and who was responsible for reporting them?
Thank you. Paragraph 4 of Part G, page 5 to 34 of Financial Regulations states the specific regulation relevant to breaches. This includes the following key points. 1. A breach of the regulations may lead to disciplinary action. 2. Service directors and managers are responsible for reporting any breaches known or discovered as they become aware of such instances. 3. The Chief Finance Officer is responsible for providing an annual report to the A&G Committee on all identified breaches, which must include the circumstances of the breach and the remedial action taken or planned by way of remedy. With regard to the first example provided in the question, you made a specific complaint which has been responded to by the relevant service area. This included a Stage 2 Service Director review. You set out a series of detailed and specific questions. Responses were provided detailing why, in the opinion of the service, requirements within the financial regulations were followed. The service recognise you disagree with what has been provided and note your intention to pass your complaint to the local government ombudsman. With regard to the second example provided in the question, this procurement occurred in 2021. The council has been unable to subsequently locate a procurement decision record, which was a requirement of financial regulations at the time. A breach may have therefore occurred. Having been identified in the 2025-26 financial year, during the Future Places investigation. This will be reported in the 2025-26 annual breach report to A&G Committee, which is scheduled to be received in July 2026. The head of procurement has subsequently revised the PDR storage and filing arrangements to that existed at the time of this example.
And there are 5 public statements for this meeting, 2 from Ian Redman on agenda item 7 and 3 from Philip Gatchell on agenda item 6. AI use in reviewing procurement decision records. A review of PDR 476 Define, Procure and PDR 758 Award illustrates how AI could strengthen decision making. In PDR 476, 3 services, Christmas lights, market and ice rink were bundled without a documented options appraisal comparing aggregated and separate contracts. The savings income opportunities section is blank. No justification is provided for not dividing the contract into lots, and financial modelling to evidence the claimed £100,000 MTFP saving is absent. In PDR 758, evaluation was conducted on a quality-only basis with no financial scoring, despite the concession model relying on income generation. The business case for aggregation is not restated or evidenced at award stage. AI review tools could systematically flag missing options and analysis, unsupported financial assumptions, absence of lot division justification, and misalignment between evaluation methodology and commercial model, thereby improving transparency, strengthening assurance, and enhancing the robustness and defensibility of procurement decisions. Second statement. This list is AI generated from the transcript of this committee's March 2022 meeting on future places. Weak governance clarity, uncertainty over shareholder control, reserved matters and democratic oversight, insufficient financial risk modelling, concerns about borrowing exposure, public liability and lack of stress testing, limited scrutiny mechanisms, questions about how councillors would monitor performance and ensure transparency, capacity and expertise gaps, doubts about whether the council had the commercial skills and controls to oversee a vehicle of this scale, evolving governance structures, key frameworks were still developing during rollout, ambiguity in the stewardship model, unclear translation of concept into accountable delivery. Concerns about governance, financial exposure and oversight were clearly raised. Where warnings are not fully addressed and acted upon, the consequence can be substantial financial loss and reputational damage, including outcomes involving the loss of millions. AI analysis can highlight recurring risks, but effective governance depends on decision makers responding to those warnings. Statement 1 from Philip Gatchell. Significant errors and omissions in the 2024-25 external audit findings and statement of accounts. Initial observations. Regarding my public issues for this committee on the 15th of January 2026, and contrary to the external auditor's introduction commencing approximately 18 minutes into that meeting, the updated findings report today omits recording Council's materially misstated net bank overdraft in now amended draft accounts note 16. Despite my earlier communications regarding 2019-20 onwards, members' allowances in 2024-25 finalised accounts note 24 incorrectly include employers' national insurance, resulting in a £105,313, 7% overstatement. Similarly, for 2023-24, this is an error type originally acknowledged after a previous year's internal forensic examination triggered by my notification of significant misstatements in certain individual members' allowance payments. The error has been overlooked by the external auditor, although within the sensitivity to public interest and reader of the accounts, qualitative materiality reporting requirement. Statements to follow identify further material accounts and audit concerns. Statement 2. Omissions from the 2024-25 accounts and external auditors reporting, the Russell Coates charity. The charity's 2024-25 audited accounts are overdue for filing with the Charity Commission. This arises from the Management Committee's documented proper dissatisfaction with the draft accounts regarding the charity auditor's outstanding queries being resolved. The core issue is the charity's transition to independence under a scheme where the timing of enabling funding has been delayed by the Council. Neither the Council's notes on accounts page 113 nor auditors' reporting make reference to this material concern, which also reflects Council's openly acknowledged stretched financial resources. System and control weaknesses. The independent auditor's report contains a disclaimer of opinion due to uncertainty regarding opening balances. That does not obviate system control evaluations, in-year transactional and substantive balance sheet testing. Consequently, the absence of audit report references to demonstrable weaknesses identified in my previous public issues is profoundly concerning. Statement 3. Further 2024-25 matters include 2014 Act. Contraventions of this incontestable legislation are documented in my earlier issues, likewise Council's untimely 2024-25 response to me. Concerning the external audit report, page 132, reference to no action regarding my section 27 objection. Firstly, my unresponded questions, all raised in time, are not voided or irrelevant. The page 132 fait accompli late response is contrary to the National Audit Office Code, nor can it be assumed I would not have exercised section 28 in brackets 3 rights in appropriate time prior to audit conclusion. I also refer to the fiduciary nature, not monetary amount, of deputyship funds held per my 15th of January 2026 issue 2. Annual governance statement. This committee, not the auditor, is the decision maker regarding qualifying contents. Unreported significant issues include notified system and control weaknesses, continuing freedom of information response failures, Ombudsman's report and failed transparency considerations in my 10th February 2026 full council issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, the next item is going to be that of the external auditors, but I've had a request that the Two Rivers Meet Studios item be brought forward in light of comments by the portfolio holder, as it may not be that long a discussion. So if committee members do not mind moving item number 8 forward, and those online, if you bear with us, I propose doing that. All right. With that in mind, can I hand over to the portfolio holder?
Good evening, committee. So I'm hopeful I might be able to shorten your meeting somewhat. For context, as an industry veteran, and he offered last time out, I asked Councillor Tarling to examine in the report once it was published and highlight any issues or questions that he might have, giving officers time to see if they could provide those answers. Having met with them today, whilst they were confident they could offer those answers verbally, putting them in writing and given the technical nature of them and the benefit of having them in the report, and that we do have time available before the full council meeting in March, and you have another meeting before then, thought it was best that we perhaps did that work and then came back to present at that meeting. I spoke with the chair, but it's not constitutional for me to and or the chair to take it out, so I'm here to ask you for a deferral until your March meeting.
Thank you for that. And just for clarity, as chair, the portfolio holder asked me not long before the meeting this afternoon if this could be withdrawn, and we are unable to withdraw items from the agenda. It's been published, and it is for A&G to discuss if we so wish. But equally, in light of the portfolio's comments, it may be that committee members are content to defer that debate. Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, thank you for the obviously purposes of openness and clarity. I discussed, I mentioned, I think in the last meeting about the condition of the business case that was put forward and the information that I and the committee found was wanting, and I offered Councillor Herrett, sort of a review of the document before it came through to this committee, which I did on Monday. It was a Monday, I think I replied, very late on Monday, I replied with that, which unfortunately doesn't give enough time for the officers to respond. And our Chief Operating Officer took on board, I think, all the comments that I made, some of which are pertinent to Two Rivers Meet, but some are more structural about the way we deliver projects in BCP, and especially related to the governance of projects. which I think he has taken on board as well, and acknowledged that there's in some areas, let's just say, could do better on the way we do governance in our projects. So there's two things that we're going to take away. I'm pretty certain that the information that we've requested is available, and the officers made it quite clear that yes, they have done this, but it wasn't in a format that could come before the committee. So with that in mind, I'm happy to take questions, and furnish other members of this committee with the sort of information that I'd propose. And I can do that either after the meeting, or I can answer questions here and now. So I do propose that we defer this to our next available meeting, rather than obviously accept withdrawal. Thank you.
Councillor Andrews.
I'm happy to second that. I think, this needs proper, fuller consideration, and as explained to us by Councillor Herrick, there is time because we have another meeting before the next full council where this one ultimately will end up at.
Thank you. And just to be clear, this will come before the next full council meeting.
So to hit the deadlines that we would like to hit with the construction, we do need to take it to the full council in March, but that is after the next A&G meeting.
Okay. So it's obviously not ideal for it to have been put on the agenda and then changed, but these things happen, and if the quality of the final report is better for it, then that is in the interest of residents. I had many questions remaining on the published paper as it was, and so if more of them can be prepared, if the paper is better and more full when it comes to us, so much for the better. I would prefer if it came before it comes to full council. I'm aware that in the past we've taken decisions at full council that have been subject to A&G then approving the borrowing, and I think that is not an ideal way round to do it, because I think that then A&G feels a little bit it feels a little bit like a rubber stamp if full council have given their weight to it, and I'm very anxious to avoid that. So if it can be before the full council meeting, then that is acceptable to me. What do others think? Councillor Bartlett.
I agree that it must come to this committee before the next council. I also have quite a few questions arising. I don't know how you were intending to address your questions. Maybe we could all just put them to the portfolio holder. I'd be very interested to see what your questions are, so I don't duplicate them. And also, Councillor Tarling, I'd be very interested to see what your comments are too. And equally, I'll share my views with you. Maybe we can just get them through to the portfolio to hopefully enhance the paper.
Yes, I mean, obviously I didn't bring officers with me. Thought it more prudent to not use their loo time, to bring them to a committee meeting at which we weren't looking for a decision. I would, obviously, so I can answer emails at a portfolio, answer questions at a portfolio holder level, but a lot of the information here is financial and technical, and I would probably need our officer support to answer the vast majority of them. So happy to take them in email format and answer them in public next time, if that's preferable.
Councillor Andrews.
Just come back very quickly. The rubber hand stamp, or the checking or scrutiny that this committee does is looking at financial matters. We're not obliged to look at, the colour of the external cladding and other things like that. We are looking at the financial aspect of this particular project, and not other aspects. So, obviously the questions need to be relevant to what this committee is doing or should be doing.
Yeah, so I did email Councillor Cox after the last meeting, and I did indicate that if officers wanted more clarification from A&G members what they wanted to see, they could reach out, but it may be sensible for us to send questions in advance as well. So I'm happy to share with committee members what I would like to see from the paper. I mean, my questions are relatively straightforward. It's around the contingency for the build. It's around how the 18% membership increase was reached. I believe 15% is necessary to break even, so it's the robustness of that. it's around the timing and how that compares to other leisure centres. So it was the same issues that was discussed at the last meeting, and I think bringing those out really clearly. And then I had a wider, a slightly more a high level question for the portfolio holders, which is about how the council thinks about the best place to invest to save overall. So that I think there's a question. It's not really fair for the specific team to answer those questions, but perhaps the portfolio holders, perhaps Councillor Cox, why this scheme and not borrowing for other schemes, and how that is looked at. Yeah, Councillor Herring.
Yeah, and I think that would be really good with Councillor Cox in attendance at the next meeting to be able to answer that quite fully, I hope.
Do we have anything else on that item? Anyone online? Oh, Councillor Tarling, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to respond to a comment Councillor Andrews said about it being the financial decision. It isn't just. We do governance as well. Well, some of the comments that I had were pertinent to the governance of projects. So, Glyn Owen, when we started the meeting today, said, you do know what the remit of audit and governance is, and he asked me what I thought this committee should be doing. I gave him my standpoint on it. He didn't disagree with me, and there is Marcus is right. At some point, we're not down to the colour of the paint, nuts and bolts, but it is more than just financial. There's the governance of the project as well, which is the overarching aspect, as well as the financial viability. So although it's come to us as a financial discussion, part of that is the risk management of it and the management of that risk as well, which is part of this committee's remit. So, but the governance is the sort of the umbrella over all of that.
Thank you. And I think that the robustness of the assumptions around the revenue and the ability to pay the debt on it, that is definitely within our remit in the decision. So the robustness of that is important. Were you indicating you wanted to come in? It's an independent member.
I had financial questions, but so can I just put my question then in writing before which due date and to who?
So why don't I propose that all committee members send their questions through to me and copying in Democratic Services, and we'll make sure that they all get put to the officers ahead of the paper coming to us. All right, all in agreement with that proposal, and the proposal is to defer this item to the next meeting of A&G. Do we have consensus on that?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, now we can go back to item number 6, to the External Auditor's Annual Report 2024-25 final. And thank you to Mr. Morris online. Thank you for your patience with that. I'll hand over to you to speak to your report, and to Matt Filmer, the Assistant CFO, to present the statement of accounts.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm joined as well by Katie Wybury, and again, thank you for letting us join remotely. So just to recap why we're coming back to the Audit and Governance Committee, members will remember that at the last committee where we went through the accounts, we did seek delegated approval, subject to there being no material changes to the primary statements. On checking those statements that had come through to us, we did identify that there was a material issue in relation to the disclosure on some of the group comprehensive income and expenditure statement misclassifications. Now, those were just misclassifications between the disclosures, but because they were material, we felt it was appropriate and in line with the delegated authority that we come back to the Audit and Governance Committee with those, for you to have the opportunity to ask any further questions in relation to those matters. I must stress that those changes did not have any overall impact. It was just due to some of the figures pulling through to some of the wrong lines. Now, in the audit findings report that you've got in front of you, we've tried to highlight the amended text in that light blue colour, so it's easy for you to identify what's changed from the report that we've already discussed, so we don't need to go over matters that we covered at our previous conversation. I'll hand over to Katie in a moment to take us through a bit of the detail in relation to this. I would just like to give members a bit of assurance, though, because one of the public statements that was made was factually incorrect, which was made saying that we haven't considered the objection that was raised. As we've set out in our audit opinion, the audit opinion is being held open and the certificate is held open whilst we conclude our investigation into the objection matters raised. So I'm not sure if there's been some confusion there between the individual concerned, but I just wanted to give members reassurance that we've not ignored the objection that's been made and work is underway in relation to that. Members, with your permission, I'll now hand over to Katie.
Thank you, Barry. So this is the updated audit findings report, and we have kept any changes from the previous version in blue text in the report, so you should be able to identify what we have changed since the last version. As Barry mentioned, the audit findings report has now been updated to reflect adjustments to the accounts since our last audit committee. We have reflected those adjustments in page 42 of the report, and those have now been adjusted. Since we finalised this report and since the accounts were published, we have identified some further adjustments. Those have now been made to the final set of accounts, and they were similar issues to these ones, where essentially they were mapping issues on the main statements. So again, they didn't have any overall impact, but they have now been corrected, and they were where adjustments that had been made hadn't followed through correctly into the main statements. So those are not currently in this report, but they have been updated in the final set of accounts. We have also updated our unadjusted errors that's set out on page 43 of the report. Sorry, 42 of the report. We've got 2 additional errors shown here that weren't adjusted and weren't brought to the last committee. The first one is a pension fund error. So this is actually a projected error. It was from the work undertaken by the pension fund auditors. It's because it's a projected error and because it's not material, this hasn't been adjusted by the council. And secondly, an error within land and buildings. So we identified 2 properties where there were calculation errors. And again, as this wasn't material, the council haven't updated this in the final set of accounts. On page 43 of the report, we have updated the disclosure and misclassification changes for all those changes since the last committee. For example, we have now included included note 16, which is the cash note, which required updating. I'm just going to pass back to Barry, who will cover something on fees, which is set out on page 57.
Thank you. So members, the page numbers that Katie is referring to is the page numbers in our report rather than the committee pack. So happy to clarify any of those changes. So as Katie said, on page 57, page 93 of your pack, the audit fees are presented there. These have been agreed with Adam. There is one item in there called where we're waiting the invoice from the external auditor. I'm pleased that that's now come through. I'm pleased to say it's slightly lower than we had in that report by about £1,300. So the quoted fees there will be a little bit lower at £533,367. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. So just one high-level question: would you consider these errors or changes? Would you consider them to be in line with what you would expect, or do they indicate any issues with the tools or the processes in putting the statements together?
There's no specific concerns, Chair, in relation to this. I think as amendments are made, it's quite complex following them through. And I think all this was a simple administrative error in that the wrong lines were updated in the accounts. And again, we use a piece of software where you actually compare the 2 versions with what we're expecting, and that identified the errors that we've reported within this audit findings report, and also the subsequent errors that have been reported as part of the updated pack that's been released today. So yes, we're confident that there's nothing significant or no concerns there.
Thank you. And there's no concerns to the final position. This is a between line adjustment.
that's great. There's no overall impact.
Okay, do any committee members have any questions? Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, I actually mentioned this at a pre-meeting we had on Monday. This page 57, which you mentioned, and the text is in light blue in the bottom right-hand corner, about 2 assets which were selected for testing were identified to have errors in the calculations by £5.7 million. Obviously, with the job I used to do, now retired from, I was checking other people's calculations and valuations, and I suppose if I did find on 2 that I selected for testing that there were errors, I would probably want to test a few more. So that's my question. You know, you selected 2 which had errors. You know, what is your satisfaction that there aren't any other errors there? Thank you.
Thank you. So when we undertake our selection of items to test for assets, we don't just do a kind of a sample approach where we pick a sample of items as we do with some other areas of the accounts. We take a very much a risk-based approach to our selection. So part of that is selecting assets where there have been unusual or unexpected movements, and these 2 assets were ones that were picked up in our kind of high risk population, i.e. we picked these up to test because they looked unusual, and therefore we wanted to test them because they weren't in line, the final value wasn't in line with what we were expecting from our use of indices and our calculations and things like that. So our approach to testing assets isn't just like a kind of overall sample approach. It's very much, we obviously do the largest items, which gives us coverage of a lot of that population, and then we're selecting assets based on those that are outside of expectation, and therefore we're expecting there to be something in there that isn't quite right, or something we're not aware of. And in these 2 cases, they were outside of expectations, and the reason for that is because they were incorrect. And our testing approach, because we focus on the largest items as well, that we've already covered off a significant portion of the population of assets with the testing approach we undertake. So in this case, because of the way we took the testing, we were able to conclude that we didn't need to essentially pick a further sample, but we had kind of significant assurance over the population, if that helps.
Just to be clear, we didn't test just 2 assets. We tested a larger number. Sorry, Councillor, I was trying to find the number that we had actually tested to give you that proportion, but I think we tested, Katie, I don't know off the top of your head, about 30 or so assets, and there were only 2 that we identified issues with.
And just to come out very quickly, these evaluations done by an external firm, you know, a national external firm for which we paid them a fee. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, it's maybe for you, Chair, as much as the auditor, but on page 32, which is related to information technology. I know we didn't want to go into any detail last time about, you know, what it was, because there was work ongoing about the security management of Dynamics 365, and just a reminder, really, what action for this committee to do something about that, and it may be in closed session that we discuss this, but I can't remember what we're planning to do on that.
No, I think that's a fair point. I think I suggested I would be interested in doing something on something in a closed session on cybersecurity, and I'd be open to that if others were. Assistant CFO Matt.
Through you, Chair. I did distribute to the committee those findings, but you would have to go into closed session if you wanted to discuss it, just because of its nature in terms of the security risks.
Yeah. Can I just propose that we have that on our forward plan, and we pick those findings up? Thank you. I did read it, but I must admit it was it's not my strong point, IT, so it needs to be a bit of group work on that, I think.
Okay, let's put that on the action tracker, and we can discuss it at the forward plan meeting next meeting. Councillor Beasley joining online. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Sorry I can't be with you present in the room this evening. I just had a question for Mr. Morris. I think it's for him. He mentioned earlier about one of these issues being about the Dorset County Pension Fund. And I wondered if you could just explain a little bit more about that. It's my first question. And the second question is, given the history, and it's similar to a question I asked him last time, but it's not exactly the same. Given the history of delay because of external audit, and now that Grant Thornton are auditing Dorset, the pension fund, and BCP Council, will that be, if you like, more joined up and therefore done more quickly, or is there a situation of Chinese walls around this whereby that can't take place? Thank you, Chair.
So ironically, the audit lead for Dorset Pension Fund is sat next to me at the moment. So we don't need to put ethical rules in place around that, because she does provide me with the assurances. We do prioritise the completion of the pension fund audits earlier on. Sometimes there are complexities within the pension funds around some of the investments that are made, and actually we're dependent upon the information coming back from the actuaries and from the investment managers in order for us to be able to test those. It is a significant improvement on previous auditors' performance in terms of getting the audits done, and we are committed to make sure that we are completing the audits in line with the backstop dates. So the audit has been completed in order to give us the assurances. In relation to the specific issue that we've identified in the audit report, Katie, did you want to just pick that up? Because I think you covered it briefly.
Yeah, sure. So this is where in the audit of the pension fund, the auditors identified a misstatement in respect of the pension fund assets valuation. They projected their error to get a projected error across the pension fund. We then looked at what the share of that projected error would be for BCP, and that's what we've reported in here as a unadjusted misstatement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments? Councillor Bartlett.
I've got no questions for the auditors, but I have some questions on the statement of accounts.
I'm sort of treating these as a joint item. So perhaps, Assistant CFO, would you like to make any comments before moving on to that, or jump straight to questions?
Thank you, Chair. I think just for a little bit of clarification, that I sent a supplementary item about 2 hours ago that submitted a new set of accounts following on some of the changes that were identified today. They are classification changes, they're presentational, so they didn't change the bottom line of anything that we previously reported. They're accounting adjustments. They go in and they get reversed. So just to give you some assurance, what we're talking about doesn't affect the financial standing of the council. But happy to take any questions.
Councillor Bartlett.
Thanks. I've just got a couple of questions. On page 159 of the agenda pack, there's an item about the Winter Gardens provision, and it talks about setting aside provision of £4.2 million for the council share in the BDC company development. Now, I'm aware that there was no project existing in the capital budget for the Winter Gardens, so I'd just like to understand how that, given any future development of the Winter Gardens will be a different development, and this provision relates to an earlier development which is not proceeded for whatever reason. How does that provision now be accounted for?
For you, Chair. So just to, I think you said, did you say 4.2 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 4.2 million is what's been set aside for the Winter Gardens, which is effectively our share, the council's share of all the costs that have been accrued for the Winter Gardens scheme and the separate subsidiary that exists as part of the BDC partnership. Because there hasn't been a decision yet whether to go ahead with stage 2 of Winter Gardens, however you want to term it, we have to set that money aside, because if it doesn't, we will have to repay that money back to the BDC as our 50% share. So it's a liability until which time a decision's made about the next steps.
Thank you. I understand that, but I actually believe that with the development of a new site development plan for it is effectively a new project. So it's complicated, but I just wondered if it was just going to sit there forever, or whether it's actually going to be written off as a loss, because that's what the provision is for, isn't it? To provide for a loss. Okay, we'll leave that one there. On page 166, something caught my eye there was about a dividend payment. Oh yeah, dividends. Cash flow statement, operating activities on page 166 of the agenda pack. Yeah. In terms of cash flow statement, there's a dividends payment, 310. Sorry, for the last financial year, 311. I didn't understand that we have dividend. And are we talking about share dividends from investments?
For you, Chair. No, those are dividends. So the majority of that is from BBML.
The two and the one.
That's correct, yeah.
It may be that that's a specific question that you might want to take away and follow up with. We sometimes do that for the more specific question if that's needed, or did you want to come in?
I think clearly, because there's personal information in all of that as well, with regards to who they relate to, we just need to reflect on that. But we can provide that information. But to give you assurance, there is a framework for any approvals of any packages. Certain thresholds have to go to certain people, have to go to full council. Certain thresholds just need the approval of the leader and the chief exec and the head of people and culture and the finance officer. Others below certain thresholds don't need those kind of approvals. Most of those exit packages will, because the individuals are got that word wrong all of a sudden, accessing their pension funds, because they're over the age of 55, and therefore, there's a liability on the organisation. So that's a cost that we have to pay to the pension fund as part of that process.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm well aware, obviously, of the financial framework, but presumably, officer decision records will be made to cover approval of those costs. And I think they will obviously be over 100k for each individual there.
There will be an approval process, whether it's an officer decision record, as in the formal officer decision record, or some other. Then that would probably be a question for the head of people and culture.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you?
Can we record that as an action, please? On the
yes. Can we put that in the action tracker to find that? Thank you, Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. On a similar issue, I mean, and this is as much for sort of anyone that's watching as anything else. That figure 27, there were 6 cases over 100,000, but the previous year there were 8. So I'm wondering, with a staff of 5,000, do you know whether that's quite in line with industry average? Because, as you say, people over 55, they're not getting this in cash. This is just the way it works. The number of overall exit packages was only half the number of the year before, and presumably some of this will relate to how the pay and reward has finalised and people have ended up where they perhaps don't want to be. I was wondering if you think this is likely to be the norm, and if this is aligned with where other organisations, similar councils might be.
My response is probably, look, it's not dissimilar to other organisations, and to recognise that. Sorry,
that's all right. Those are the financial regs.
Oh yeah, there's a special rules with regards to the process has to be followed. When actually there's exit packages. But my assessment is, look, this probably isn't different from other local authorities and organisations of this size. It's nothing to do with pay and reward, however, because actually this relates to 24-25, and we didn't achieve pay and reward until December 2025. But what it will be a reflection of is we were going through transformation. As part of that transformation, there was a lot of organisational change to change the shape and nature of the organisation to be data driven, for example. And we'll come on to some of that later. That was changing job roles, and there were, if you like, headcount reductions as a result of that. and therefore there were redundancies that flowed from that. And that's a reflection, of those 6 posts. But we'll pass the message on to the Sarah Dean, the head of People and Culture, and we'll ask her to respond with the details of those 6 posts for you.
Thank you. Well, if there isn't anything further, we need a mover and a seconder to take a formal vote on the following. Do we have a proposer?
Happy to propose.
Thank you. And Councillor Tarling, thank you. So it is recommended that the committee A, notes the audit opinion and findings of the council's external auditor included as Appendix 1 to this report following the audit of accounts 2024-25. B, approves the final 2024-25 financial settlement included at Appendix 3. And C, approves the signing of the Statement of Responsibilities and the Letter of Representation by the Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee and the Section 151 officer. Do we have a consensus on that item? Can we have a show of hands for that item?
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And those against?
None.
Those abstaining?
1.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I assume Barry and Katie, you'd like to head off after that. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Chair, and have a good evening.
You too. Okay, we have item number 7, presentation on artificial intelligence, governance and risk management. So I think for this, we're over to Sarah Chamberlain, Director of IT and Programmes, to present on this one. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, as introduced, I have the pleasure of being the Director of IT and Programmes here at BCP. We brought this item to Audit and Governance to talk to you about our approach to governance of AI within the organisation. We're going to talk to you about the assurance framework that we've set up. We're going to talk to you about how we are assessing the AI use cases that we're working through at the moment and how we manage those risks in terms of things like bias, data protection and accountability, and where the whole piece sits with our senior management team and how we're governing and triaging and signing those pieces off. I'm joined by Mark Biondic, who's our Head of IT Infrastructure and has been really key in terms of leading the development of that governance and risk management framework. He's going to take you through a presentation, and then there's an opportunity for us to answer any questions you may have at the end of that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to try and bring it up on screen for you. I'm working IT, so this should work. It never works. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
No problem.
I'm Mark Biondic. I'm the Head of IT Infrastructure, part of Sarah's senior management team, and responsible specifically for the back-end platform servers, Wi-Fi network, cybersecurity, and AI. So thank you for having us here tonight. I hope I'm going to, by the end of these very few short slides, give you some assurance that we are managing the use of AI appropriately within this organisation, and would welcome any thoughts you have on the process that I show you today, because it's about 6 months old now, so we're perhaps actively looking to review it regularly as we mature more in this space. But without further ado, let me crack on. So the agenda will look at why we need specifically this AI governance. I'm then going to spend a couple of slides talking about what that framework and what that decision-making process looks like and what we do to try and tease out the detail to what the salesmen are telling us when they come in and tell us, and they do. I'm going to describe the role of senior leadership, that's our corporate management team, and what they do as part of that decision-making process as well. And then lastly, I've got just a slide showing you some of the current AI initiatives we've currently got going on, actively in flight, in proof of concept stage, or barely live, really, but would welcome your thoughts and questions on that as well. If you want to ask questions as I go through, please just raise your hand. I don't know what the protocol is, but I'm quite chill on that one, so let me know. Why do we need the governance then? So effectively, AI is a brand new tool. As with all new tools, they're capable of creating marvelous things, but they're also capable of destroying everything as well. And AI is no different in that regard. It's the genie that's out the box, and we must ensure that if we're harnessing it responsibly. We're doing it for the right reasons, and especially so in the public sector, where we have to maintain that public trust. They have to be absolutely assured that we're making the right decisions. It's not the computer making those decisions for us. Specifically as well, it relates to 2 corporate risks we have on our corporate risk items at the moment, CR04 and CR26, which relate to overall risks around cybersecurity, and CR26, which is specifically around the increased use of AI not so much potentially how it could be used against us. And I think we've all seen examples of that, of how increased use of AI will deal with, creates more demand for us within the council, but equally how we're using it internally as well, and the dangers of misuse of AI internally as well. So yeah, that's part of what we've been driving to do, and not covered in these slides, but for sure, for example, we've locked down access to non-sanctioned AI tools on managed devices. You won't be able to access Grok, DeepSeek, some of the other, the big names on ChatGPT, for example. You just won't be able to access them on corporate devices. They're not safe for corporate use. They're not safe for sensitive data. That's why we've locked them down. And Copilot and some of the other tools we'll talk about are the only ones that are sanctioned for use with the council data. But I can go into that in more detail if you want. One of the main reasons we need the governance as well is to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons. And so it is a bit Wild West. It's like an early tech bubble at the moment. If you remember the old 90s tech bubbles of the internet, etc. This is another one of those. And we absolutely have to be making sure that we're only progressing AI use cases that are not just technically feasible, but are aligned with what strategically this council is trying to achieve, and are financially viable, in that they do give us some form of return on that investment. Because none of the tech isn't free. It does cost, so we have to make sure that we're getting something back for it. It supports that transparency and accountability, which are words I've heard a couple of times already this evening. It's absolutely imperative that we can describe how we're making these decisions, especially when AI is being used to support that decision making, so that our residents feel that they are those actions are explainable and traceable, and that's which in my opinion is essential for that auditability and scrutiny and ethical assurance that we need to be providing the public. Lastly, we're not alone. UK government has helpfully provided us some good practice playbooks, of which we hope to try and align these type of governance processes along with. They're maturing all the time, and absolutely there's an onus on us to have these things in place before we're buying any kind of tools, and making sure that we're looking after our data appropriately and not giving it to the wrong people inadvertently. This is a bit of a technical slide, but I thought it was important. I thought it was quite interesting just for you to see the process. This is actually just what happened. This is a decision-making process in the current draft of it. We do like to accept AI requests from anyone in the council, really, any of our colleagues and members, etc., even the public who could put a case forward. We would happily explore it. But there's a two-stage process that we then go to once that case is made. There's what we call our desirability, viability, and feasibility assessment, which will summarise as DVF from now on. And we also go through what we call a pre-procurement checklist, which is more of a technical deep dive into exactly what the tool's doing, how it's working, and I'll come on to that in a future slide. What that does once we've done that assessment is effectively scores it, and we get a threshold score. If it meets that threshold score, we are happy to approve technically that that tool is viable, it's feasible, we can do it, it's not risky, and that it's got some form of return on investment, and that we can propose that the whoever's bringing it forward, be that children's services or planning or IT or whoever, that they can bring that then forward to the corporate management board to seek the approval to get the funding, and then will then be held accountable by CMB to deliver the return on investment that they promise through that investment. And I think that's an important distinction to make, because in IT we're not necessarily the best people to be able to then go back and grab that return on investment. It's not necessarily our budgets that those savings are coming from. They're from the service delivery budgets, from the frontline services that are making those savings. Once CMB have approved that, it effectively falls into our project management framework and becomes a piece of work that goes into the queue with the rest of them prioritised, scheduled, and funded accordingly and delivered accordingly. At any stage through that process, it can be reworked, it can go back. If it doesn't meet the thresholds, we would invite those people we're working to go away, do some more work, and then come back and see if we can get that score up. We're very positive about most of these use cases. Most of them definitely do have legs, but what tends to be lacking is the thought process behind, in terms of where you're going to get those savings from and how will they materialise. Moving on. The DVF framework itself, really, it's three key themes on this one, really. Desirability. is it a genuine problem? I mean, I see this a lot. Is actually, what problem are we trying to solve? Is it actually a problem, and has somebody actually asked for it to be fixed? We shouldn't be doing it if no one's asked for it. And that's one of the first key tests that we ask of anyone who brings these AI use cases for. Viability. This is all the financial stuff. So, can we afford to do it? Is there a clear, demonstrable ROI on this investment? Is that in terms of hard cash back into our pocket? Is that more about efficiencies and streamlining, etc., which is just still potentially savings, but not in the same kind? Can we afford to do it, or can we just afford not to do it? And we're seeing that a lot with certainly the productivity tools that give the staff some times back in their diaries. Feasibility is about, can we do it? And is very much back to some of the technical and risk elements of what we're talking about today. Specifically, are there legal, regulatory, or ethical constraints around what we're doing? The EU has a very handy scheme which we tap into quite regularly to assess these, which is, how risky is it? Is this a life and death thing, or is this just about back-end admin or productivity software which come with much lower risks? What's the risk if the AI gets it wrong? That helps feed into part of that assessment as well. The one that's more close to my heart is actually, can we do it ourselves? And something I'm very keen that we start to build ourselves up to do is to use the tools that we have already at our disposal. I've mentioned Microsoft Copilot already, which we've deployed to all staff, the free version of that to all staff. But there's a lot you can do with these tools if we can put the effort in and just put get the dedicated time to commit to building them out. We're not there yet. So I think we call it build, not buy, don't we? Which is where we want to move to. We're still very much in the buy, not build phase of things, but we'd love to move into the build, not buy, so we don't have to start paying for these external tools to be doing these things. We can build them ourselves and support them ourselves in-house, which we're very adept at doing already. So they're the three key parts. That's the initial assessment that we do. It's kind of like a business analysis assessment, I would say, rather than a technical assessment on the viability of the proposal. What comes next is the technical assessment. So as part of our published technical strategy and standards, which sit on our website, we have an appendix to that now, which is our AI procurement checklist. This mandates that all of our suppliers answer about 20, 30 questions around how their AI model and large language model behind it works. It's designed to tease out some of the things you're seeing on screen here now. So bias and harm, how has their AI model been trained? AI models are trained on large amounts of data. And as such, if that data has inherent bias built into the underlying data, that will surface in the results that it provides. AI isn't always right. And that's why we need to understand how it's tested, who's accountable for any oversights or any sort of mistakes that it makes. We need to have clear lines of reporting and accountability with the tools so that we know who to go to, and the staff or the people using the tool know who to go to, and so on there. So yeah, it's much more of a technical assessment of them, and particularly covers things like how are they looking after the data, making sure they're not forwarding it on to other partners or using it elsewhere. It's those kind of questions that we ask. And so this all happens before the procurement, way before the procurement. Moving on. With the role of senior leadership, so as I've said before, the Corporate Management Board remains the final approval authority on any AI use cases once they pass that DVF assessment, and especially where there is significant spend required to implement said technology. We would very much like to see a second draft of this where we can actually have some devolved responsibility to do some of the lower hanging stuff that doesn't necessarily need to get held up by CMB and decision making at that high level all the time. And I think that's what we'd like to do over the next phases. But really CMB retain that sort of corporate strategic oversight on things, and make sure that the departments themselves that are asking for that funding to implement tools do then come back and deliver on that return, be that through reduction in budgets or whatever. Finally then, just leave on screen before I go on to the last page, which is just questions, but I'll leave on screen here if you like. These are just some of the initiatives that we've got currently underway using AI. I'll cover a few. Magic Notes is a very powerful meeting summarization tool, which we tested early days using our in-house Copilot tool, but back then Copilot really wasn't fit for purpose with that regard. Wasn't very good at face-to-face meetings, etc. Magic Notes is a very compelling and powerful product that's been proof of concept for the last 3 or 4 months, I think, in adult social care amongst about 28 practitioners, and has proved to be very, very successful in that space. And they're now looking to expand that out to more social care staff. High level figures, it's saving about 4 hours worth of admin a week. 76% of the users were able to submit their work the same day as opposed to 23% of it. There's some compelling arguments in there about how it's improving service delivery for adult social care. Road Metrics down on the list is another great one. That's a visual AI tool which has been a camera attached to a smartphone, driven around by a member of the traffic engineering team, designed to pick up potholes in roads. Yeah. And it's basically bought, and again, some early feedback from them and that team, and they're looking to expand their use of it. It is a little bit more expensive, that tool, than their previous tool, but they were doing about 400 kilometers of road, scanning about 400 kilometers of road a year with their previous tool. They've upped that to about 1,200 kilometers a year now with the AI tool. And yeah, in terms of preventative maintenance and such, we'd had access to some of those tools a little bit earlier than roads would potentially have got in some of the states they're into now. Lastly, Copilot Premium and Free. That's the tools which I think you've all probably seen and hopefully using on your devices. And if you're not, talk to me because we can help you get more out of it. The free version is available to all staff and has the same enterprise grade protection, data protection applied to it as the paid version, so it's safe to use for corporate use. The paid version does a lot more. It's got a few more bells and whistles, but comes with a price tag. And so what we're looking to do at the moment is obviously drive more use of the free version, encourage use of the free version, and really leave the paid version to a distinct set of very narrow use cases which can justify having a paid version applied to it. And then you'd be amazed at what you can actually do with the free version if you tried a few things with it. So very happy to provide any more help on that if you want in the future. The last point on there, learning and continuous improvement. So you might want to come in on this one as well, but this is just our journey internally within IT and programs to try and skill ourselves up on this and get involved in it. We're quite a self-sustaining team, but we're not a large team. So a lot of this work that we're doing is all side of desk. We've got sort of groups of technical hobbyists who are helping us put this together internally, but we've got no sort of formal positions in that space yet. But that's something we'll be looking to bring forward to Corporate Management Board over the next 6 months to try and move us from that buy to build mentality so we can do it ourselves. And I'll stop there. I don't want to say anything else. But
No, I think you've given a good description. I think, as you said, this is a really exciting time. There is huge opportunity, but what we didn't do with this piece was we didn't rush into it. And we've actually been told by our partner Microsoft that we're actually standing out now as a local authority because we didn't do that, because a number of organisations, not just local authorities, rushed into all of these AI use cases or instances that were promising to save lots of money, and they haven't. The stats are about 80% of AI use cases or product proof of concept AI use cases have failed. And we were really keen as an organisation that we got the governance in place and we got the control in place. We've worked really hard in IT to stop the grey IT, so that that's our terminology, so where people are going out and procuring bits of IT themselves. We've worked really hard to rationalise our applications and our software and all of those sorts of things. So we like being in control. So this was a real piece for us from IT to get that in place. And as Mark's alluded to, it's going to evolve. So the whole thing will evolve as we move through. But we were really keen to get that initial piece and make sure that the director group understand that it has to be done through us initially. And we will do that piece in terms of sign off from a data perspective. And yet we think it's okay, but also that procurement piece. So I don't think Mark mentioned what we've also agreed is that any AI use cases that are from a third party, they're only procured on a year's basis. So we are sitting alongside all of those developments of those cases. Again, so at some point we can say, actually, no, you don't need to procure that anymore. We're now equipped that we can do that for you. And testing that the whole time with Copilot, as we've said, because that's within our E5 licensing at the moment. I think in the future, Magic Notes will be able to say in the not too distant future, that can stop, we can do it ourselves. But again, it's building that capacity and capability with a really passionate team, as Mark said, that are doing it side of desk and want desperately to move forward for this organisation and help.
Thank you very much. That was really, really a great start for this conversation. I think our independent member, Lindy, you indicated first, so we'll go with you first.
Thank you, Chair. I've asked AI whether BCP has got an AI governance framework that's adopted by the organisation, but seeing that you said in your presentation they don't always give a correct answer, I thought let me ask you as IT, do we have an adopted AI governance framework? That's the first part, and I've got two more parts to my question. The second part is what processes do we have in place to safeguard sensitive data that's being used by the AI systems? Because you get data access from internal and external. And then the last one is the AI regulations. How are we keeping up with that? What is IT doing to make sure that we comply all the time with the regulations and don't fall behind, and the reporting is on par with that? Thank you.
Over that, Mark.
Are you going to check my answer with AI?
Using Copilot to record and then.
The first question around the governance.
It's good.
Yeah. So the first question I would, regarding the governance, yeah, absolutely. So this is part of it. So this is part of the sort of decision-making governance. So the usage governance, if that's what you're referring to, or do we define what people can and can't do with AI? Is that what you're asking?
No, just sorry, Chair, through you. Just a formal framework.
Yeah.
Has there been a formal AI governance framework been adopted by BCP?
You'd have to probably define to me what framework means to you than it does to me. So to me, this is our framework in terms of our decision making around whether or not we choose an AI product or not, whether or not it's ethical and safe to do so, or whether or not there is risk around that which should prohibit us from using AI in that specific use case.
So has it been approved by council, this framework, or was this the first
This has been approved by Corporate Management Board, this framework.
Yeah. So if you don't mind me coming, so as we said, we're developing it. So what we have published is an internal policy. We also did that piece around, we shut down all other access to other generative AI, ChatGPT and so on, as Mark mentioned. So we were absolutely clear at that initial point that those were the steps we were taking. So this whole thing is evolving as it becomes more formal, and as we develop this, I would imagine we would come back to council, but it's a CMB piece whilst we develop those initial AI use cases and stop people going off and procuring stuff and not talking to us, and that whole data stuff around it as well. Stuff's the wrong terminology, but Mark's responsible for the IT security team as well, so there's huge controls there too that are keeping us.
One of the first things we did was establish those 7 rules of responsible use of AI, which we published out to all staff. These are 7 high-level principles which says what you can and can't do with AI, what you should and shouldn't be doing with AI. What's been great to see is actually how that corporate guidance has now trickled down into some of the departments who've been formulating their own, especially in adult social care, where they've been very good at formulating how is AI used specifically in social care, which of course we're not experts on. They're the experts on what they do, and we've been providing them that support with the tool. But the 7 responsible rules to use AI, if you look on the internet, search on the internet, just search responsible use of AI, you'll find the 7 responsible rules. They are there and they've been endorsed by full CMB, not by cabinet or anything that I'm aware of, but certainly by Corporate Management Board. But like you said, that's what we want to strengthen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Second part of your question, what was that one again?
On the security, what's
yeah, so in terms of what it can access. Copilot, and this is one of the reasons why we've been very careful to focus just on Copilot. Microsoft's tools give us what we call enterprise-grade data protection, which means anything we give the AI doesn't stray outside of our technical boundaries. Any data you feed it stays within our tenancy, as we call it. So it can't be seen, it can't be used by external partners, it's not shared by Microsoft, it's not used and sold on to other people. It's not like ChatGPT, which does all of that and more. So we made sure that, you know, that's in place, that's there to be done. Yeah, there's not sure there's much else to it.
Well, also, there's a really key piece with this, all of this, that it's not just an IT and programs piece anymore, the whole AI and using the AI. So we've got a digital adoption team that work internally, and alongside all of this, have been doing ongoing work in terms of working with our people across the organisation in terms of this is how you should be using this AI. This is Copilot, it's not doing your job. There is absolutely a responsibility for you to be checking this information that you're distributing, working with it. And again, that's a huge focus for us going forward, and that will absolutely increase. And people need to be aware that that's the case. So that's been running alongside all of the controls and the governance that we've been putting in place as well.
Yeah, human in the loop is one of the non-negotiables in my book still at this stage, which is, AI does not make decisions. It's a decision enabler, and it helps you make more informed decisions and more consistent decisions, better quality decisions perhaps, but it doesn't make those decisions for you. No intent should we be letting social workers just let the computer do it. It just shouldn't be. We're not at that level yet. We will get there. Technology will evolve to that point. It will absolutely get there. In just the last few years, it's been incredible just how much the technology's moved on, but we're not there yet.
And it's enhancing roles, it's not taking away the social worker. That's again what we're seeing with the magic notes piece. They're able to give the value to the person they're working with. It's taking away all that administrative burden, and they're able to get through cases and really add value. So that's again the messaging with all of this. It's helping you from an admin perspective, but you've got to generate quality outputs from it. And as I said, real feedback from our people on the ground that are saying, I'm able to do my job.
Yeah, Magic Notes has been incredible. Some of the feedback we've had from social workers is, I can finally do social work again, and I feel enthused to do social work again because I can now spend my time talking to people and dealing with complex interactions, with face-to-face interactions, rather than spending my time at the desk, typing it all up into the system 4 times and then copying and pasting it 4 different places. That's the gift that AI has to give, is to take that away. The social care worker still needs to check its content, check its output, read it, edit it, own it is another tag phrase we use quite a lot. It's once you let AI develop it, read it, edit it, correct it, refine it, and own it. It's your output, it's not the AI's output. And that's another one of those key principles, if you like, that we try and take.
AI regulations.
AI regulations. That's for all of our jobs, really, isn't it? We attend an awful lot of sector-specific stuff. We're a member of various local government forums and collaboration groups, sharing our experience with lots of other local councils, and also just generally keeping an ear on things. Really, I mean, I'm a tech nerd at heart anyway, and I'll read all this stuff in my spare time, but that's what we're able to do at the moment, and that's how we're doing it at the moment. So it is still side of desk, but we're doing a good job of it.
Yeah, and your IT security team have to go off and do learning on a regular basis, don't they? Keep up with the legislation and those sorts of things.
Their area specifically,
absolutely.
Yeah. They have to attend so many courses per month or so many seminars per year in order to keep their CCNP, their technical qualifications updated in cybersecurity, and if they don't, they lose it. So we're almost forced to keep up with the industry, and if you've been working in tech, it's kind of comes with the territory. It's kind of what you have to do, because what's new today is obsolete tomorrow, and there's something else coming around the corner. But yeah, thank you. Is that all right? Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Trent down next, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you. I think you almost answered my question when you said there should always be a human in the loop, because I experienced, as part of the community governance review, I read pages and pages and pages of representations from people, and AI was used to summarize it and come out with summary points from it. What was interesting, and it was particularly noticeable to me because it was where I live, it was very sort of local to me, but the summary came up with something which hadn't appeared in the text. The AI interpreted lots of different comments, and most of them were comments by people who perhaps didn't understand what had happened over the last few years, but it created a summary point which didn't exist in the points that it was summarising. And went through a sort of a human interface sort of thing. But had that been anything critical, then an unfortunate recommendation could have been made. And if it hadn't got noticed, then it could have had an effect. So, I'm kind of hoping that built into what we do is the human in the loop, or even the added thing of an AI to check the AI or something, because there is a problem. Because I read through this slavishly, went through pages and pages and pages, and this point came out of nowhere. But I think it was a misinterpretation of a couple of totally different points, which were actually made. And, maybe looking at it as a human, you can understand what was behind what was written, but it sort of took it a slightly different way.
Can I add to that? I have a question that's quite similar. I've seen in a professional capacity, I've seen some really frightening hallucinations in the text, and this worries me particularly in the adult social care and in that setting, because it's quite simply it's harder to edit something that is written convincingly and spot something wrong. It is harder to do that critical editing than it is to just write rough notes. And so it's actually more difficult for the social workers to then proofread with a really critical eye. And if 95% of it is right, the chances of something going in there that then has a serious implication when it comes to family court or safeguarding situation. So I think that it's just to reiterate that point about the how are you making sure that those are aware of just how difficult that task that they have to do is.
I can't disagree at all. I think that's absolutely right, and that's entirely why the training and the adoption and everything that we're putting in place with the users when we roll these tools out, it must be made implicitly clear that this does not do your job for you. I think with face-to-face meetings, it might be slightly easier for a social worker who remembers the conversation they had, and then when they read it on a bit of paper, that wasn't mentioned at all. That could be slightly easier. But yes, you're absolutely right. It does not absolve our responsibility as professional people to do a professional work to a high standard. It's just there to take, if you like, the first draft out of the way. The bit that really people struggle to do is to sit down in front of a blank bit of paper and start writing it. That's the bit where it really adds value. And I joke to people all the time. It's co-pilot. It's not autopilot. It's supposed to work with you, and you're supposed to help do it. It's absolutely right, Tony. It's exactly. We've seen it. I've seen it myself, and it does happen. And that's why you've got to take it not with a pinch of salt, but you've got to edit it. You've got to read it, edit it, own it afterwards. But when you do that, the quality and the consistency of the output you can create, you can definitely tell a marked difference, and you can see it actually. You're probably seeing it yourselves already in the correspondence you have with the public or with other officers. You can actually tell that sometimes the quality is going up and the consistency is going up. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Human in the loop it's absolutely non-negotiable at the moment and must remain so, especially in these high-risk areas. But in other areas, I think it's very safe to just let it crack on and do it. And there's some real efficiencies to be gained there. And I think certainly in areas like FOIs and SARS and stuff like that. And I think one of the statements made about procurement, all those things are great ideas and actually very valid uses of where AI can just be used to do sense checking and raise the flags that actually this is an area that you might want to look at quickly there.
And then one more piece, if I may. So from a procurement perspective as well, we mentioned that we set up those procurement rules and we actually go through. So there are lots of questions we ask suppliers in terms of privacy and data use, how they explain human control, so accessible explanation of how AI works and assurance that human judgment can override that automation. So again, we go through that criteria for our third parties. We can manage the digital adoption from the co-pilot piece, which, as I said to you, is a real focus for us at the moment. But again, we made sure that our third parties, we absolutely went through that checklist to deal with that risk.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Stannard.
Thank you, Chair. One of the biggest risks from my perspective is the officer not knowing what they don't know. because not in the case of adult social care because they were in the meeting and Magic Notes, but the case of the national police officer, that did the associated with the safety advisory group with the Aston Villa Maccabi Haifa. He asked AI about a situation which didn't take place, did not happen, and they used to make they made a decision on the basis of what AI said. So we need to be really careful from that perspective.
A few people want to speak. Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're slipping into Aldous Huxley's Brave New World here, and some of the comments that have been made about digital adoption team. I think that's is that Children's Services, because I think my son's already been adopted by YouTube. It's coming into all our lives. I'm seeing a consultant doctor next week, and he sent me his AI Lyrebird he's using to do notes, and just telling me that it's in all my notes are going to be held by Amazon Web Services in Australia, which brings me on to one of my questions about the secure data. You mentioned that don't change doctor, change doctor. But no, surgery's fine. His IT maybe dodgy, but surgery is absolutely good. I'm having something done again. I'll explain. It's not for a public meeting. So it comes on to the bias bit of ask a stupid question and get a stupid answer. And taking Lindy's advice, I checked my questions on Copilot, and it's actually come up with 36 other questions to ask you, which I'm not going to ask. But one I was going to ask, hasn't been mentioned yet, is about the environmental impact. And we hear about in the news the cost of AI to the environment and the power, heating, water. So my first question is how are we assessing that against our own net zero targets? And I think that's quite important, that we don't let people literally go off use Copilot every 5 minutes to search something without just some cognizance of what happens. I work with somebody who used to write poems on AI. Literally for every meeting, I've got a poem, and I went, thank you, but that's just cost us 5 trees, sort of thing. Can we please stop with the poetry? It's not necessary for this meeting. That's the first one, and it is really about the environmental thing, and the second one is about the hosting and making sure that you mentioned Copilot, but the other one's about the secure hosting and data ownership. Thank you.
On the environmental impact, absolutely, that's why we're trying to align ourselves with Microsoft and not with anyone else in particular at this stage. Microsoft do have quite a compelling sort of carbon buyback period, and that's why really we want to just sort of deal with them. We work very closely with Gail Scholes and the sustainability team. We've got access to dashboards, which is showing us exactly how much carbon consumption we use, not just generally in AI. It doesn't really go down to that fine granular level now yet. It will do, and they're always improving the dashes. It's more around the general use of our M365, which is our productivity software suite that we use, Office, PowerPoint, Word, Excel, etc. The carbon footprint of using that, and yes, it's absolutely on our mind. It's part of our technical strategy and standards. Ask them to describe sort of their, I forget the ISO number regarding environmental sustainability, but there's a specific reference one to that in there, and we're asked about how they can offset that. So every supplier is judged on their sort of environmental footprint as well. It is a footprint. There's no denying it. Tech takes electricity, and electricity costs, and we're seeing the impacts of that all over the place. The price of RAM and the price of computer equipment is going through the roof because of the AI demand. So costs are going up as well, and energy costs are going up. But we're doing the best we can to make sure we're aligning ourselves in a reasonable and diligent way with somebody, rather than just letting it go out. And that's part of why these frameworks are here in place to help us make the right decisions with who we go with. Because there's almost a point where we don't have a choice almost. I mean, we do have a choice to not use it or not, but we very soon won't have. And therefore we've got to align ourselves with our strategic partners, which currently is Microsoft.
Sure.
Thank you. Just to come back on that, the other bit was about on the sort of plan, do, review thing. You're obviously in the do phase at the moment. Are you targeting any KPIs for uptake and usage, and how it's improving our business, and what would those metrics be on how we're going to be? It's fine for a bit of fun and have a bit of a laugh in an A&G meeting to ask the questions on my behalf, because I'm not bright enough to think of my own questions. But on that, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But I might not actually be here. I might actually be just a projection on the YouTube that the public are looking at later. So yeah, really, how are we measuring the uptake and the benefit that's given us as a council?
So very much the focus of the next 6 months and the next phase of our continuous improvement and innovation program is to start establishing what those KPIs need to be. We're very keen, for example, you won't get a paid co-pilot license very easily now. We will absolutely adamantly push you towards the free version first. But over the next few months, we want to start recapturing, because we did about a year ago with our user base. We want to go back out and recapture some of that feedback. Tell us quantitative and qualitative feedback about what you're seeing through your use of co-pilot, because part of that builds into a larger business case in terms of being able to establish ongoing capability and sustainability in this space. So yeah, that's something we'd very much like to come back and describe to you when we've got that done.
It's a huge focus of ours in terms of baselining where we're at and what these benefits are out of this technology. And also, as Mark said, the return on investment from the co-pilot licenses that we have, making sure they're in the hands of the right people. And as we mentioned earlier, those AI use cases. So we're kind of moving out of phase one. So we've got the control in place. We've got a number of use cases that we've seen that we've triaged and we've said can go ahead. We're keeping close to those. We've also rolled out the co-pilot and the paid co-pilot. We're now moving into second stage of how we're governing that, how we expand that for the paid co-pilot, as we said. We're building a criteria to that. We've got our digital adoption team working alongside, that we're going in and working with the right areas to really get the best out of those particular use cases. It will continue to move, but we've built strong foundations. And as Mark alluded to, I need to be able to come back to you with the facts and the outputs so that we can come back with a case of this needs investment, because it will make this organisation better. I'm absolutely convinced of that if we use it properly.
We've got very good metrics available to us on the Microsoft dashboard. We know who's using it, what they're using it for, how many times they've used it, whether they've used it in Word, Outlook, email, PowerPoint, etc. Yeah, we know all of it.
Yes,
so,
in a positive way.
On the hosting element, yeah, that's part of our cybersecurity questions. We asked them to obviously, are you ISO 27001 certified? Do you have Cyber Essentials Plus as a bare minimum? ISO 27001 is what we're looking for with these providers, which is the cybersecurity standards around hosting of IT services externally, and certainly it's got to be UK hosted for a start. It's nowhere outside the UK. All of our data centres are either in South Wales, which case technically it's UK, and South East England is our primary data centre. So that's where all our data currently sits.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you. From what I've heard, yes, AI is a potentially useful tool. Obviously, as we've heard, that Chief Constable in the Midlands, relied upon it unnecessarily. Clearly, he didn't have up on his wall a famous quotation which I had up on my office wall. I'm going to read it out because it's one which users of AI should bear in mind. Donald Rumsfeld famously said, "There are no knowns. There are things we know that we know. There are known unknowns. That is to say, there are things that we know that we don't know. But there are also unknown unknowns. There are things we don't know that we don't know." And it's AI is a tool, and I think that's a point we should bear in mind. We use tools to help us do things, and we shouldn't let AI make decisions at the end of the day. I've got a question for you, which I'd like to then follow up. There are other local authorities who are well more advanced than BCP in this. Obviously, we've had problems of merging 3 councils through 4 councils. How have either of you actually gone on any secondment or visited any other local authorities that are doing this? And, you know, any examples?
Yeah, actually, probably the reverse. We're being asked an awful lot to come and talk about
Yeah.
what we've been doing with our governance approach and then try and explain it to other councils. So, yeah, while we not be as far forward as we would like to have been at this stage with regard to our AI sustainability, I think we're streets ahead in terms of the governance. So actually, we've been asked more to come and talk about that. But as I say, we're a member of quite a number of local government collaboration groups with other local councils, Essex, Derby. There's quite a lot of others which are a few steps ahead of us still. And yeah, we're always talking. There's a bit of code we've been working with Somerset. We've been working with them. They've got some code on some redaction, AI assisted redaction software, which we're tinkering with. We borrowed from them and we're working with them. We've got our guys to have a look at it and see if we can provision something similar. And we're working with the departments that do the redaction to say, look, how does this work for you? Can we tweak it? So yeah, yes is the short answer.
One local authority which I know particularly has made use of AI in planning is South Cambridgeshire. They used it, I believe, in sifting through a large volume of comments on the local plan. It's got very intuitive leadership. And my slight concern on them relying upon AI to come up with the answers or the summary on the local plan is potentially judicial reviews and things like that. But the other thing which, say, South Cambridgeshire Council has also pioneered is the 4-day week for officers. And it's interesting that one of the statistics they came up with was that on one particular complex planning application, AI sifted through and came up with a summary in 16 minutes, which actually had, because they did a comparison, they'd taken officers 4 days. And obviously, South Cambridgeshire is doing 4-day week for officers. So, you know, would this potentially lead to you to brought into local authorities of, you know, improving things? Because obviously, I know South Cambridgeshire has been criticised by the government for doing the 4-day week, but it you know, if it gets you the results by Thursday, surely that's better.
That's what it should always be about. Is the short answer. It should always be about creating efficiencies and doing it, making the end product better. If it's not achieving that, we shouldn't be doing that. The planning one is a very good example. I did my apprenticeship dissertation on planning and went and worked with our own planning team. And you're right, it takes them hundreds of hours, especially on some of the major applications, for senior officers to review the many hundreds of planning comments made, some of which are pages long and actually only have a point of about 3 words in the entire 4 pages. And it's taken, you know, the work I did with our internal planning team showed that in theory we could see similar results if we just, you know, developed a small little agent or an AI bot that could potentially just be very good at focusing on sentiment analysis and planning applications and take those down from days and hours to minutes. What you do with that time is your discussion to be had and not mine. But it's yeah, you're right, it will improve the efficiency, which gives us more time back in our diaries to either deal with the workloads that we've already got on our plates, which has been going up since 2008. And, you know, this just hopefully, my view is that it helps level the playing field a little bit more. And then we can start talking about 4-day weeks. But that's a personal view, sorry.
That's okay. So just to say, if any of you are seeing instances of AI use cases that you're impressed with, please let me know, because we absolutely follow up with those organisations and understand. As Mark alluded to, we have relationships across the UK with a number of local authorities, but each of my heads of are members of network groups. So Mark is obviously part of a cybersecurity group, as is his team related to that. We're part of a dynamics group, CRM system. We've got lots, I chair a CRM dynamics group, digital adoption. So again, they all have their streams of specialisms which they're looking at. So we've got that real network that we're sense checking things all of the time. So that's really important to us. The other thing as well, just to point out, as Mark mentioned, we're spoken to or asked to go and speak a lot to other local authorities because we do stand out quite significantly in that we've done the LGR piece. So underneath all of the AI that we're taking forward, as I said, we're really keen to get the governance in place. We have the data platform and the data lake. We have a data and analytics centre of expertise. We haven't even touched on the data that's going to come out of this AI and the opportunities we have with predictive analytics, how we can link up our strategic systems that we've established, which again puts us ahead of LGR colleagues. So we are in a really strong position, and we may have taken it slowly behind others, but that's because we've got this real focus on we want to build, not buy. We want to get it right, and we want it to be secure and governed in the right way.
Councillor Bartlett, I think we have you next.
Thanks. It always comes back to the money with me, I'm afraid. I noticed that we've got through Microsoft 365, we've got Copilot already. So if you're on the intranet, you've already got access to Microsoft Copilot. Sorry, the basic version, absolutely. So the question is, did we have to pay more on our basic Microsoft license to get Copilot as well? Was there an increase in that?
No.
There wasn't.
No, the only increase comes when you have the premium Copilot version, and that is an extra £300.
Anyone who's on the intranet has already got access to AI and should be using it daily.
What we already pay.
Okay, if they know what it's for and whether they've had any training, and which is
the piece we're talking about.
Which is a bit, yeah. No, I think that's probably all I wanted to ask you. I mean, because you talked about lots of other different versions of Copilot, and I'm thinking, what are those? And but you know, I'm sure there are people like me that wasn't even aware that Copilot was already available through the intranet. And even if they knew it was there, they probably wouldn't know what to do with it. A lot of people, you know, I know Tony and I probably. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Again, the independent member, Sam, would you like to come in now?
Thank you very much. First of all, can I thank you for a really classic A&G highlight, A&I for potholes. That's so joyful. I love that. Thank you so much. Getting to the business side of things, if that's okay, it's a question of reassurance in terms of your desire to move from buy to build, which is exactly what you should be doing. I'm doing it in my business as well, so brilliant stuff. Can you reassure me that you have secured sufficient finances from within forthcoming budgets to support the size and speed of what you're doing? Because the more you do, and the faster it goes. I do very much understand that, and I'd really like to know if you've been able to secure the finances you required, or do you need to bring it back?
We have not secured the finances we require going forward. That's the strategic piece. So that's absolutely where we need to focus our attention. We are absolutely controlled in terms of the money we're spending right now, as we alluded to earlier. So the governance around those third parties, absolutely controlled. We're also measuring the return on investment against those investments, and that's all controlled through CMB and our corporate strategy board. Copilot, paid Copilot licenses, I said that sits under our E5 Microsoft licensing piece, which again is really controlled in terms of budgets, dashboards. So Mark's got his dashboard up now, so that's all governed internally, and we're reporting on who's using what and keeping that governed and absolutely understood. Going forward, absolutely clear that we're going to need investment for this organisation. And what we did when we published our digital strategy back in April was internally, again, side of desks, my team and I carried out what we called our data and innovation programme. It was an internal programme which assessed how mature this organisation was to achieve that digital strategy. And if you cast your minds back to the transformation ambitions, it was about being a digital data-led organisation. We're massively passionate about that still, and we still absolutely believe in that, and that's absolutely what we're pushing through. And we presented back to CMB that data and innovation piece, which was looking at things like how our employees are set up. So we could call that our employee empowerment section. We did a digital assessment on digital skills, and we fed back that actually, maturity-wise, there's a lot of work to do in terms of, as we've said, digital adoption, all of those sorts of things, the next stage of governance. What we proposed to CMB is that we stand up, and we're scoping that at the moment, what we're calling our continuous improvement and innovation programme, which will focus on invest to save use cases using data and innovation, and will enable us to come back to CMB and propose confident business cases that we are confident will realise savings, to enable us to get set to build capacity in our project teams, in our service design teams, in our business analyst teams, to deliver real good invest to save instances of innovation, to enable us in the long term my aim and my hope is that some of those savings back can help me build capacity in the team and build a sustainable model for the future going forward.
I have to say your passion absolutely comes across from both of you, and thank you so much for your presentation this evening. I hope you find a moment to be able to change long term to short to medium term, because that's how fast it's moving, and that the council and councillors will get right behind you. So really good luck with it. Thank you for this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. If nobody minds, if you, or did you want to go in, Councillor Slade?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. I'm also an MP, and we use it a lot. Parliament is using it hugely. Copilot is the one that, again, we're using within our internal system, so it does seem to be fairly well trusted. And colleagues are already seeing quite significant savings within their workloads. I just wanted to flag one of the programmes that seems to be really popular at the moment, and I don't know whether you've looked at it, and that's Claude.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that's seems to be offering something different to what Copilot is, but it seems to be quite innovative. So first of all, can I just ask you about that, and then I want to come on to a particular application where I think I'm assuming all the councillors around here would agree with me, and I want to understand how it might work.
Yeah, I'm aware of Claude. Claude is behind the scenes. It's what they call it. It's a different large language model, so it's been trained on a different set of data. It's programmed slightly different to Copilot. My opinion of it is it's slightly more well tuned to creative uses, but that might have changed. And again, that's part of what I need to go. Yeah, I will specifically go away and see if it's changed. But it's about more creativity. It's about writing stories, image creation, video creation, that kind of thing. It's better at that, and that's what you find with all these different tools. Some of them are very good at very specific things. Yeah. Copilot is very much the multi-tool of AI. It can do a lot of things pretty well, but you're not going to run a garage off it. You're going to want some dedicated specialist tools for doing some specialist things, and you're going to get better results. And that's where Claude is differentiating itself. The big issue for me will be about Claude's privacy and data security, and what it's doing with the prompts that you feed it, the information you feed it, which is where things like ChatGPT fall over massively. So, but I'll go away and look at Claude again and remind myself of what it can do.
Thank you. And then I've got a staff question and then an application question. The staff question is, we're constantly getting, you have a course to do, which, thank you. I value them greatly. But I wonder whether those courses, which are they're fairly, you know what you're going to get. What worries me is that if I was not able to access ChatGPT because I was using it domestically, perhaps, and I wasn't able to access it on my council laptop, and I was a staff member, I might be tempted to put it into my phone because I was more familiar with using that, and therefore potentially risk a cybersecurity situation by doing work not on the council device because you blocked the things, the denial line effectively. So beyond those courses, which are great at reminding us about cybersecurity, but what are you physically doing with staff to help them really understand how they can use Copilot really effectively, better than doing what I might be tempted to do, which is get on my phone, do it privately on my phone, and then put it back into the council computer?
That's not unusual. I mean, I was a security officer, IT security officer for 10 years, and that was one of my main bugbears when I was back at Pool and the security officer, and we bugged you about it at some point in the past, that prohibition doesn't always generate the results you want. So by blocking access to something, all you're actually doing is driving a black market into that, that thing. So yeah, we did that with a degree of hesitation in terms of blocking it, but it was absolutely the right thing to do because it was just better to not let anyone even do that. What we're physically doing and what we're trying to do as much as possible, and I do this an awful lot, is throw myself in front of these departments and offered to put myself at away days or departmental meetings, throwing myself in front of them and say, I want you to come and talk to you about using Copilot. I want you all to use Copilot, and this is what you can do, and this is what it's bad at, and this is why you shouldn't be doing it. So it's a chance for me to get out there and sing about the 7 principles. It's just doing what we can do in terms of adoption and user training with what we've got in front of us at the moment.
And finally, Chair, I want to mention the 2 words that every councillor hates, and they are blue badge. We know that our blue badge department is falling over. It's supposed to take no more than 12 weeks. We know our neighbouring councils are dealing with blue badge applications in about 7 weeks. There is no reason whatsoever why we are failing, and we've got huge numbers of people, including some known to us in this room, whose applications have taken 20 weeks. And what I find quite regularly is that people have no communication with the council for 12, 13, 14 weeks. Then they get told by the council, oh, there's something missing. You didn't include something. There's a bit on the application that wasn't quite right. Those customer-facing applications, whether they be housing, BCP home choice applications and blue badges, how can, or are you already, and if you are, it's obviously not working, it's taking 20 weeks, how can you get it so that you can put them in as a screening thing so that people instantly, we know you haven't provided this, this and this, so that you're not wasting 3 or 4 months of someone's life before we start asking them questions. And if you are doing it, it's clearly not working.
I will indeed. So I've got a case in front of me on blue badges because, yes, so the team are working through it really positively, but I've asked for an overview. I'm looking at it now from my head of development based on why it's taken so long, to illustrate the capacity that we have in order to get the piece done, but also the context of it. So I can share that with you. There's lots to it, but obviously the background to it, there were multiple disconnected services. So again, coming out transformation, all this stuff takes time to connect it and bring it all together. Whilst we were working with legacy platforms, and it didn't support assessment nuance, complex eligibility, I can't say that, eligibility routes or end-to-end case ownership. So with instances like this, it's not just a case of IT go in and we sort the system out. There is an awful lot of work to do with the service in terms of how are you actually processing this for the customer? Why are you doing it that way? In some instances, why are you printing out a piece of paper and taking it over to this side of the office? It's those sorts of, and that's not a criticism, that's just how some people operate. So again, this is a real mission of ours, moving into this continuous improvement piece. My aspiration for my team, which is not just IT, it's programs, and we've developed new roles. We've got continuous officer roles in place. We've got business analysts. We have data scientists that we're developing, is that we spot these issues, and this is why I've asked for this case here, and we send a SWAT team in, and we've got someone from IT sat there, we've got someone from the digital team sat there saying, oh, can AI do this? Is there a way we can automate this? We've got someone from my service design team, the continuous improvement officer, coaching and nurturing and saying, have you thought about doing it this way? We're not sure that's the best process. And then what they have to do is they have to bring all of that back to the IT team, who then start to work that through and work out how that will work on the system. Then there's the user experience piece, so it's about testing, all those sorts of things. So I am really sorry, it is an absolute instance of something that's taken a long time to deliver, but it's an example of, it will enable me to illustrate why it's taken so long, but also where I want to get to, if we can build capacity and capability out in the workforce as well to be able to deal with this stuff. We've got to become an organisation of continuous improvement and have that mindset. We've got to change things. Why are we working in some of these ways? And yeah, that's that sort of thing. So really passionate about that too.
Sure. Can I just quickly come back on that, because I heard everything you said, but what I didn't hear was any chance of any immediate change, or the sort of what can we deliver, what bit of it can we start to deliver, because this isn't new. And I hear what you say about, you know, councils coming together, but I think our residents are sick of it. It's been 7 years, and frankly, there is no excuse for not even being able to tell somebody what's missing until 2 weeks after the deadline that the government sets for a council to do it. So I accept that to get the system that works really well, that gets it down to 6 or 7 weeks, it takes all of that stuff. But there has to be some way of, I can use Copilot by just chucking something into it and saying, what's wrong with this? Even if the customer service operative or whoever it is in whoever's department deals with it is able to upload it and say, can you spot anything missing? Even that would be enough to be able to go back to the customer and say, it is going to take 6 weeks before we even look at this, but we've already spotted that X is missing. That alone doesn't need all of the brilliant work you're doing, and would at least let people feel that there is some progress. But I thank you for that. But sorry to be a pain.
Not a pain in the slightest, and we get that. And again, that's where as IT and programs, we're really trying to collaborate across the organisation. This programme we're developing is not about IT and programs, it's about an organisational change piece, which, as I've mentioned a couple of times, is about mindset. It's about the customer service operative saying, why are we doing it this way? This is frustrating for the customer. What can we do differently? To your point, can we use Copilot? Can we do? But also we need to be feeding that back to my team and saying, we're doing stuff this way, it shouldn't be that way. And that's that piece that we're developing in terms of demand management and making sure we're prioritising the right stuff based on strategies. So I totally agree. And I don't hope, I'm extremely optimistic we're going to get there because we are just so passionate about it, aren't we, as part of the organisation? So we're pushing and pushing.
There is a governance point here, Chair. There is a governance and scrutiny point here, because quite recently there was a scrutiny piece on the blue badge system. And I wonder whether the question from an audit and governance and also from a scrutiny point of view is, when we're looking at when something isn't working, should in the list of questions automatically be, what are we doing to engage with this team? Because I am not aware that that's a part of the standard process of, like, have we looked at how this might be done in a more streamlined way? So whether there's a recommendation somewhere along the line that says, in that governance piece, how do we, because I don't think we sit in that space. How does scrutiny and audit or our council committees ask the question, what is the role?
Well, can I come in now? I'm conscious of time. I have some questions on that. I'll give others an opportunity to come back, but my questions was touching on that, somewhat more high level, I think. So I think it's great that you've developed the use case assessment for taking on a new tool. What I'm not seeing is how that is embedded into the 3 lines of defence model at the moment. So I think the next stage, to my understanding, is to see what is the ongoing monitoring by the 2nd line of defence. What is the ongoing monitoring, and then where does it feed into yours? And I think there needs to be a register of tools and metrics against, so how they are judged on an ongoing, continual basis, and that including training, take up, potential bias, model deterioration, all of these things on that ongoing basis. And that's what I'm not seeing, how that fits into the risk management framework. And maybe that's one we can touch on next in the risk management policy section, is how you would go about incorporating that. I can see a way in which it would make sense to me for every director level risk to have an AI risk at every director level risk register, if that makes sense. So each directorate is responsible for AI risk in their areas, and that ongoing monitoring. Are we using them as we intended? Are we using them in line with the original use case assessment? And that kind of ongoing monitoring. And then I'd like to see how that feeds into internal audits work plan. I'd like to see how that feeds into committee governance. So it's not to say that's on you to answer now, but I think that's the next stage. It's that register of tools and how that fits into the 3 lines of defence monitoring, because I'm not seeing that governance at the moment. I'm really reassured by the prohibition that you put in place. I think that's the best thing I've heard. Second, a use case assessment is great. And third, your team is clearly impressive and really driven and leading on this. And I would add, I went to the Southwest Chairs of A&G meeting last week, and there was a presentation on this, and they were all quite impressed that we were doing a deep dive as a committee onto this. There was a lot of how would you tease this out of other governance. So I think we can be on the front foot on the governance around this and the councillor engagement on this. So I suppose it's a question, do we want to recommend something to council, to cabinet? Or do we want to put something on the action tracker for this to kind of come back to us with a plan for when you're going to develop this governance model for it? I feel like that's a fairly sizable question to put to you now. So happy for that one to be taken away, but I'd be happy for the committee to make a kind of more formal recommendation if that would help move that forward.
It's our next stage. So if anything, for me, I'm delighted. Thank you. We've got your support. You understand. I'm pleased that we've assured you in terms of this initial piece. As we've alluded to, we're absolutely moving into the next stage now. So support through this process would be super, because it's something that absolutely needs to be governed effectively, which I think hopefully you've got across. That's really important to us.
Very much. And I'm even minded to suggest proposing a recommendation to Cabinet to come up with a timeline for implementing a governance, a full governance strategy for this. How would that interact with your plans?
That's fine. I think what we need to be mindful of is we are learning as the pace of technology is moving along. So that's why we're having to phase this approach. As we've referenced, we're talking to colleagues, we're talking to Microsoft, we're checking all of that piece as we're working through. So what you might find is that it's phased, or it takes different stages until we get, probably, I think, 18 months, 2 years to that. What I'm hoping is the sustainable model where we've got that really, really good governance in place. We're doing that build, not buy piece. But we're going to have to learn as we continue to evolve and keep up with the pace of technology as it's going.
That's helpful. I mean, my feeling is that the more we can embed it into the culture of risk management from now, so every director knows how it's being used in their area, knows the risks to be looking out for. That can happen even if then the actual choice of models and everything changes. So yeah, I'm not sure who put their hand up first. Councillor Tarling.
Thank you. I was going to hearing what Ms. Chamberlain's saying and the governance piece, and I don't want the governance thing to be pushed all the way back. We're still learning, because you've got to draw a line at some point and say it doesn't need to be down at the weeds level. It can be quite a high level governance, as in this is the policy, this is where we're doing the reviews, and as Councillor Collins just said, a timeline is a good thing. But for this committee, I think, I don't, much as it's been lovely and very informative, and this is an informative, paper we've got here. I would think anything more than sort of 6 months would be a reasonable time frame to have the officers come back and give us an update on where they're at. I think if we were doing it a greater frequency than that, we're probably going to take a lot of their time and what have you. But at that point, it might be good to ask, and I don't know whose remit it is, whether it's actually in the IT Information Directorate or a wider governance piece, that we get that framework for governance as in a draft IT governance policy presented at that in 6 months' time. It needn't be the final, the final one, because nothing should be final in it. We should be always constantly, reviewing and adapting. But I think to have something down that's presented to us in 6 months' time, I think would be reasonable.
So I think there's 2 things there, right? One is a recommendation to propose an AI governance policy, or strategy. I'm thinking policy in line with our other policies would be best practice. And then the second is update us in 6 months, however that's progressing. But does that sound right?
Absolutely. We'd love to come back. Thank you.
So, Councillor Bartlett, did you have your hand up there? All right. So should we take that? Is that a formal recommendation we need to make?
Just like to be very clear on what you're recommending. So I first had a recommendation to Cabinet to establish a timeframe to implement a full governance strategy for AI. So if you want to take that forward, obviously you'll need a seconder chair. And I then heard that you want to request an AI governance policy and an update to the committee in 6 months.
So let's rephrase that. We would like an update to us again, as you have done in 6 months, on how things have progressed. Should we agree on that first? Do we have consensus on that? I don't think we've got a seconder, but yeah. And then the other question is then, do we request in a more formal way that Cabinet produce or create an AI? Yeah. To make a formal recommendation from A&G that BCP Council adopt an AI governance and risk management policy. Does anyone have any? Monitoring officer.
Yeah, Chair, I'm just thinking that that's an officer type of engagement, I think, and decision. I think there will be no objection to recommending Cabinet to engage with officers at the appropriate expertise, and maybe even the portfolio holder of, which I think might be Councillor Hannah, to something like that. I was like, an audit to direct Cabinet to adopt a policy, which would normally be an officer type decision. So you might find that gets knocked back with a, it's not possible. So I think there can be a stern recommendation with views, but actually that should be an officer level with engagement with the appropriate directors, experts, and the portfolio holder to maybe return with an update if need to be, to give it some weight.
Yes, I mean, I don't feel very strongly how we go about it. It's just to express A&G's belief that this is a good thing to do. I'm not too fussed on how best to do that. What do other members think? Assuming general agreement, Councillor Bartlett, you seem.
No, I think it's fair to say that do we need one? If we do, can officers please think about it and when they'd like to implement it? I mean, it's a bit premature at the moment, isn't it? And things being in a state of flux and development as they are, we wouldn't want to tie anybody to, timescales or anything at the moment. But I think there's a clear recognition that we will eventually need a policy or framework or whatever. And there's no reason why we shouldn't start sort of thinking about that. Simple as that, really.
Should we phrase it as perhaps officers can bring, when you come back in 6 months now, we make a recommendation that a draft is ready by then to be discussed? Is that a better way of putting it? Because then it doesn't have to be completed.
I think we would come back to you anyway. In 6 months' time, the governance and control will have moved on anyway, so we'll be able to share that with you. It will we're already talking today, weren't we, about the next phase of what we need to do. So we'll come back to you definitely with an update, which will be around governance and control of which will link to a policy update potentially. Does that work? Sorry,
could I just add as well that I think you're right to point out that maybe service units should consider the risks of AI to their service within their departmental risk registers. I think that could be done anyway. I mean, in the same way that cybersecurity should be featuring on what they do in the event of a disaster, a business continuity exercise should feature in departmental risk registers. I think the use of AI will be different for each department. So in legal and democratic, it's the risk of increased number of FOIs and SORs, and what does that do, and what risk does that bring to their service? So I think that's something we could potentially think about at officer level, is how that's captured at departmental levels, because it will be different for each, and there'll be clear and present dangers obvious to some already in some departments and not to others. So there's nothing stopping us doing that now, it feels like.
Yeah. If it's more trouble than it's worth, we can forget the formal recommendation to Cabinet and just say, look, you're going to come back to us in 6 months, but can any portfolio holders or senior officers watching, A&G are very desirous of a thorough AI governance and risk management policy strategy, how it embeds into all levels of each directorate, 3 lines of defence all the way through. And the sooner we can get an update on that, the more that is progressed before you come in 6 months, the better. Happy with that?
I think that's a very sensible suggestion. I mean, we know we've had evidence today that these issues are being addressed. They've been described to us, and I think all we do need is an update in 6 months' time. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I just reiterate? I think that a register of tools, and then the metrics on which to benchmark them. I think the sooner we can be moving towards that, that's something concrete for us to challenge as committee members. I think would be useful, or if not us, whoever the appropriate scrutiny is. Okay. Do we have anything more on this item? I'm conscious it has gone on a long time. I've sort of chosen that the Two Rivers Meet item could get replaced by it, so we kept you a lot longer than the plan, but that was very interesting and important. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Right. Item number 9, risk management policy. This is over to Mr. Stannard and Fiona Manton online. Again, thank you for your patience waiting. Fiona, did you want to speak to this one?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. This report introduces the Council's new risk management policy. We undertook a review of the existing policy to refresh and strengthen the Council's framework for the identification, measurement, management and monitoring and reporting on risk. The policy principles have not been subject to significant change, but in order to reflect the aspiration to continue to develop risk management discipline, the new policy includes the plan to implement enterprise risk management. The key part in this policy is how we manage risk, and that continues. The introduction of enterprise risk level is to seek to better align risk visibility and to look to have a clearer line of sight across the whole organisation. We've always had in place risk categories, but the implementation of both the new policy and the enterprise level will allow us to maximise the benefits of the risk categorisation. Work will be ongoing to refine the policy over the next 12 months. As an example, an initial workshop took place yesterday to start the shaping of the enterprise risks, and a further workshop is now to be planned with CMB to refine these newly proposed risks further. Then work will begin on the alignment of all the underlying risks. So we're looking to try and line all lower level risks beneath the enterprise risks. In addition, consideration will be given over the next 12 months to the Council's approach to risk appetite, particularly where a risk appetite statement should be developed or not for each of the enterprise risk areas. So we'll have varying risk appetites in place. Members will appreciate that we have a finite amount of resources for risk management, so we'll be looking to utilise technology to support the risk alignment process and the reporting process. This will bring the need for further development of the risk app that we have been developing over the last few years. So that functionality will need to be updated to allow us to include this additional level of risk and the subsequent risk alignment. As part of the continuing development and evolution of the policy, I would like to invite the committee, the chair, to consider or agree a separate non-core meeting where we could share more detail on how we plan to implement the policy, the proposed risk framework and how it will work, and the future reporting to this committee on risks more generally, so that we can come to a level of agreement that meets your assurance requirements. The new policy is included on Appendix 1 of this document, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, can I just say really well done, Fiona, on this. I think it's a fantastic piece of work, and it shows I wouldn't say it's a change of direction, but a real refreshing look at risk in BCP. And I must say my first, I didn't want to go into any key points on it because I think you've hit the absolute nail on the head here on identifying the difference of the enterprise risks and this hierarchical strategy. I just think it's really good. I just want to say thank you very much. It's great. I take on board what you said about having another meeting on non-core risk policy and the strategy of how we address that, and risk appetite is is a very key thing, and that's probably something which you'd want to involve the various different departmental heads in, because there's a different risk appetite for each department. People get upset about bins, but if somebody doesn't collect my dustbin, nobody's going to die in a ditch over it. But we really care very highly about children's services and some parts of children's services. So risk appetite varies across the departments, and it might be really good to have that deep dive into that risk appetite for those different departments. Either I would say it would be with the heads of department, with either this committee, or it may be something that we spin out to the various other ONS committees. And I think rather than have it just as an A&G thing, I think risk should be spread across every well, certainly it's spread across every department, but certainly every committee should have it on their agenda, really. So just a really well done, Fiona. I was very impressed by this report and documentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I concur with that. Lindy, I think you had your hand up.
So it looks like there's more explanation this time around on the risk appetite and tolerance, which is well done. I've just got a few comments on those. So, for instance, on where you say on page 306, you talk about, for instance, financial risk is a low risk appetite, or harm is not tolerate, breach of law is not tolerate. You've got 5 areas that you list there. So my first comment would be like similarly, like Appendix 1, you would say, or you give a description or definition for the user of what is the impact scoring guidance. When do we rate it high, medium, low, etc. Or Appendix 2 is the likelihood guidance, like unlikely, could happen, etc. So you give guidance to the user to be able to rate the risks correctly. So I would suggest similarly, where you say financial risk is a low risk appetite or not tolerate, to have like also a table where you explain, and the orange book has got tables in it, yes, to help the user, and then just adapt it to BCP to talk to when is it minimalist, when is it cautious, when do you need to be mindful. I mean, you can even use and then also on the risk averse, minimalist, and cautious, open or eager. There's 2 tables on the orange book. I see you nod your head, so you know what I'm talking about. So just to include that maybe, because here you touch on basically 3 different areas as opposed to what? If you say financial risk is low risk appetite, as opposed to what else could it have been? Okay, I think I've labeled my point. Then the other point I wanted to make is on page 308, you talk about enterprise risk, you talk about service delivery disruption, you give definitions of people, health and safety, technology, etc. So I think maybe you can workshop again on the list that you've got here and think about information, the risk on information, security risks, I would think is a big one that needs to be also listed in here. There's operational strategy. So again, also in the orange book, they've also got a whole list. Maybe I think, I don't know what was the rationale for you to only include these ones, but for me at a big council like this, I would definitely think information and security should also be part. Maybe just to update that list. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Did you want to speak to those, Fiona?
Yes, if I may, yes. In terms of the risk impacts, if you like, and the risk scoring mechanism, we have a holding position in Appendix 1 in terms of how we're currently rating them. But we do very much want to do a risk appetite exercise so that we can refine that a lot more. So there's much more guidance and clarity for those undertaking the risk assessment. So we'll be building on this over the next 12 months. Similarly, you're quite right in terms of the Orange Book and the risk categories that they place forward. And the work that we're already underway in terms of refining these even further. We had discussions yesterday, and security was one that was raised. There may be some amalgam of some of these enterprise risks, but they will also be supported by risk categories that will allow more refinement if we want to, say, for example, analyse all the risks that are identified in the organisation, say for cyber, we'll be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else have any? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you for that. This risk management policy dated February 2026, is this one that we need to sort of formally adopt? Because I've had a quick look or Googled our risk management policy, and the one which has come up is dated April 2019, which is obviously something that was I think I read in the report something I think was based on Bournemouth Borough Council's risk management. And obviously there were a lot of things that were sort of brought together for the new council. And obviously, you know, with your considerable talent and skill, it's been sort of updated and refined. So are we formally adopting it by a resolution, and you know, therefore will it later this week be uploaded instead of the one that's currently there?
Thank you. Yes, the policy was approved by the Corporate Management Board. I think it was probably towards the end of January. In terms of it's brought to this committee for noting, and as soon as it's passed this process, if you like, we will update it on the council's website tomorrow, for example.
Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you. I had a few little sort of minor comments to make on the report itself, but I'm not going to bore you all with those. But there was one in here. Yeah, the definition of harm. I just wanted to question that. It says we won't undertake it, expose anybody or the organisation that's going to cause harm. And I just wonder what is actually meant by harm. Is that physical harm? Do you want me to find the? See if I can find the actual paragraph. Oh yeah, it was on page 21 of your report, but page 206, I think, of the agenda pack.
I think in terms of the definition, we would look at the wider definition for harm there. So it would pick up any issues that would engage in terms of physical harm or further harm as well.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I thought it's probably physical harm. I would imagine, or danger, or something like that. But I just wanted to. It might be worth just sort of being more specific in that expression.
Yeah, I'm happy to look at that.
Yeah, the other thing was the table of at the beginning of the report. It sort of talks about this type of risk identification, and there's a list of risks that goes from A to I. About the sort of risks that the council will take into account. But then we go on to actually the enterprise risk categories themselves, which is a slightly different number of risks. And one would have thought it would have been the same. I found that a bit confusing, that you're identifying the type of risks and then you come up with a different list of enterprise risk. I thought the two lists should be the same. And then the last thing I suppose to comment on it in paragraph 6.12, reporting of risk, there's a sentence that says annually by rotation, each RM level risk owner will provide a detailed update to the Audit and Governance Committee on their risks. Well, if there's an individual responsible for each of the enterprise risks, that will take 11 years because there are 11 categories of risks listed on the enterprise risk list or table. You know, I might have read that wrong or misunderstood what the report was saying, but I think it's probably if you could just have a look at that and see if that does actually make sense.
Yeah.
That was
So
it. But yeah, sorry, go on.
certainly the intention is for each of the enterprise risks will be owned by a member of the corporate management board, so they may well have more than one, and each of those risk owners will attend this committee if the committee wishes to update on a number of enterprise risks at any time, so that they are all reviewed by the committee within a year.
Okay, that's sort of, I've probably misread that then, because of what it says actually, annually by rotation, each RM level risk owner will provide a detailed update to the Audit and Governance Committee on the risk. But yeah, so it could be all of the CMB could be presenting at one meeting, and that would cover all of the risks in one meeting. Yeah, within 1 year. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I understand. Thank you.
So, and we still get the corporate risk register as we have done. Would that be correct, or have I misunderstood?
That's the intention currently, but obviously, depending on what you want to see in the future and how it evolves in terms of the enterprise risk level as well, that will be a discussion point. But certainly, the corporate risk continue to be updated and will be presented to the March meeting.
So I personally, I like the level of, you know, I don't disagree with having that framework, but I like the specificity of the corporate risk register for our discussion purposes. And so I think we should have a discussion then about how to make that useful update to committees and presenting on the enterprise risks and the corporate risk registers and the overlap there. But I have a general question about cross enterprise risks. So for example, and it speaks to the conversation about AI. So I see risks associated with the use of AI sits in technology, but the risk of AI tools in a adult social care capacity affecting the provision of service there, that would sit under the safeguarding enterprise risk. So for things where they could affect different risks, I think I'd be interested at some point, not now, to understand a little bit about how they are being captured and how the best way to capture them, and how you think something like, I mean, maybe you should be involved in the work that we just heard about AI and how to bring a risk across the whole framework. And how that works. But maybe that's the subject of the deep dive that you're proposing.
Indeed.
Fine. All right. So with that in mind, any other questions or comments on this one? Right. Do we have a... right. It is recommended that members of the Audit and Governance Committee, 1, note and support the new policy as included as Appendix 1 BCP Risk Management Policy as part of the continuing development of risk management of the Council. 2, support the proposed approach to adjust and refine the policy over the next 12 months with regular updates to this committee on changes and further developments. 3, note the reporting of risks to the committee proposed in paragraphs 15 and 16. Do we have consensus on that item? Oh, sorry, Councillor Tarling.
Can I just add in the point about that we forward this to the other Overview and Scrutiny committees for inclusion, and that a report is given to those committees. We recommend that a similar presentation is given to those committees. I think it's appropriate because as the point I was making about risk doesn't just fall into audit and governance. It is a function of all the overview and screening.
I had this conversation with the chair of the Children's Services, so an ONS committee, and they were shown the corporate risk register, and so they were aware of the corporate risks related to children's services, but it's not a large part of their work plan, to my understanding. It's sort of seen as ours to own, but I take the point that maybe there should be more information sharing about it. What about for the action tracker? Each of the other ONS committees are updated on this new policy as the officers see fit. Yeah.
Yeah, I know as chair of ANG, you meet the other chairs, and I if you're happy, well, I believe that's a vehicle you can or should be using. I'm happy if you think that's the appropriate route to take to basically pass on this information, this report to the other committees, and discuss it with them whether they want to take it into committee in its fullness or whether it's just something to note.
I like that idea. So there is the meeting of the ONS chairs, and I'm invited, but it's predominantly for the ONS chairs. But I will ask if that could be as an item on one of them, just to inform them of this new policy and suggest that they reflect on how it can be brought into their work where relevant. Happy? Yeah. Happy? Monitoring officer looks perturbed. It's just a suggestion for them to consider for their work plan, but I think their awareness of it is a good thing. All right, do we have consensus on that item? Excellent. Right, item 10. Thank you very much, Fiona. Thank you. Item 10, financial regulations, annual evolution for the financial year 2026-27. And I think we've got Stuart Bickle online. Again, thank you for your patience. This is if I'll let you speak, Stuart, to your work, but if this could be relatively brief, because this is an annual evolution, isn't it? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Nigel's going to speak to it instead.
Yeah, I'm going to start. Thank you, Chair. Can you just indulge me on saying a couple of introductory points about agenda items 10 and 11? They both apply.
Yes, please.
You may recall, if you've been on this committee before, at the outset of BCP Council, the A&G committee agreed that the policies overseen by this committee would be kept up to date by a business as usual annual evolutionary approach. And that means that the policy will be approved by you guys for it to go live on the 1st of April of the new forthcoming financial year. This approach has resulted in all of the policies in 10 and 11 agenda items being fit for purpose, responsive to legislation changes, and take into account and rectify any local issues where the policies are found to be wanting. And that might be on things like ambiguity, loopholes, unintended consequences, those sort of things. So the annual evolutionary changes are shown in red text throughout the respective policy documents, and the red text stays in the live version of the policy, so users of the within the council can readily pinpoint changes year on year. An awareness and communication programme within the council will again be actioned this year to remind staff of both the policies in general and to highlight the changes that we've done in this evolution. And then the evolved policies will clearly go on our website and our intranet, so they are transparent. And please also note that later on in the municipal year, you as a committee receive specific update reports on the operational effectiveness and in practice use of these policies. So first of all, agenda item 10, financial regs. So financial regs, as well as being a standalone document, is also part 5 of the Constitution. So all agreed changes by A&G will go on to the next full council for approval on the 24th of March. So the regs can go live on the 1st of April 26. So in terms of changes this year, in parts A to F and part H, there are very minimal changes. There's some very minor word changes here and there. Please note paragraph 9 in my report, which highlights a change associated with the BCP Council company governance. The change means it is for council to determine if a BCP company follows the financial regs, not the company board. So a bit of lessons learned from the Future Places. It wasn't an issue for Future Places, but it did crop up as a sensible recommendation. And you may recall last year there were some very significant changes to Part G of financial regulations, which are the procurement and contract procedures. Those changes were associated with the changes from the Procurement Act regulation and reform, sometimes shortened to Procurement Act 2023. This year, the changes are more modest and are seeking to make the regulations more explicitly clear. There is a small typo on page 367, 5-42 of the financial regs in paragraph 28B. There is too many that's in that paragraph, so that will be removed for the version that goes on to council. Through you, Chair, may I now invite colleague Stuart Bickle to say a few words on the changes in Part G, and they're mainly concerning contract management requirements, which are listed in paragraph 11 of the report. Over to you, Stu.
Thank you. Stuart Bickle, Head of Procurement and Contract Management, and part of Adam's senior management team. Much of what I'm going to say is echoing what Nigel has just said. So the changes to Part G very much follow our experience of living with Procurement Act 2023 for the last 12 months. That went live February 25. Since then, we've obviously got our operating framework very much geared up around compliance with PA 23, and there are currently some inconsistencies between what's in our finance regs and what is in the regulations, the Procurement Act regs. So I want to iron out those inconsistencies just so they're properly aligned. A couple of the other pieces, so Regulation 5A, we've been challenged a few times on what do we mean by technical reasons, and Procurement Act does define that, so I've used the words from the Act to spell that out, so it removes any ambiguity there. There's a focus with specifications just on outcomes to encourage supplier innovation, which again aligns with Procurement Act, and then Regulations 32, 33, 34 all relate to notices that are now mandatory under the Procurement Act. So one of them is to do with supplier performance, another is with significant contract changes, and the final one with contract termination. We're obliged to publish notices in the public domain around all of those with certain thresholds. So again, it's just spelling out exactly what is expected so that the contract managers that are scattered across the business, and there are many of them, about 270, just to ensure that those people liaise with the central procurement team in a way that enables us to publish those notices the way we're expected to. So that hopefully was nice and quick and summarises the changes.
That was excellent. Thank you. Very clear. And I really appreciate the approach of annual iterations and showing in red. And seeing that year on year is clear. So thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions on that item? Right. So do we have a mover and a seconder to take a formal vote? I'm happy to move Councillor Tarling. Thank you. And Councillor Andrews for second. So to recommend to Council the adoption of the financial regulations as shown in Appendix A and approved by the Audit and Governance Committee, the operation go live date to be the 1st of April 2026. All in agreement? Do we need a show of hands, please? All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. If that's you now, Stuart, then thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Right, item 11, and this is all of them, the policies together, and it's just Nigel, you've already spoken to this one, haven't you? So this is the annual evolution of the anti-fraud and corruption policy, the whistleblowing policy, the declaration of interest, gifts and hospitality policy, and the regulation of Investigatory Powers Act and Investigatory Powers Act policy. This is Anna.
Yep, thank you, Chair. And I just want to highlight just a couple of things here and there, if I may. So in the anti-fraud and corruption policy, just note that we've got a new forward from Aidan as the new Chief Executive to demonstrate to colleagues the most senior officer commitment and statement and the importance of the policy, frankly. So that's new. Within the whistleblowing policy, that's been updated to include a stage 3 decision record template. which is good practice and helps in situations such as employment tribunals down the line. I just want to also explain that there is some planned legislation changes deriving from the Employment Rights Act 2025, which will make sexual harassment under certain circumstances a qualifying disclosure from the 6th of April onwards. So from the 6th of April, we will add that to our list, but we've got this strange quirk where we've got 6 days of one policy and then with the sexual harassment element added from the 6th of April. Bit of a annoying element there. Pardon me? With regards to the declaration of interest policy, it's probably the policy we've strengthened and added to most significantly out of the 4, and most highlighting is the additional employment emphasis, and we're stating very explicitly that additional employment must be declared. This is in response to a growing fraud threat exposed by the National Fraud Initiative, sometimes called polygamous working, where an employee may work for several employers, and obviously it makes it easier being hybrid and working from home. So those are being very explicitly stated. So that's all I want to say, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think those the changes are clear and the description clear. Did anyone have any questions or observations? Councillor Andrew.
Just a question. Obviously, this doesn't have to go to full council, so it's something that we need to formally approve. So obviously, come the end of the March, you'll just update the one that's currently on our webpage. Yeah.
That's correct, Councillor Andrews. Yep.
Right. So, do we have a mover and a seconder? Oh, Councillor Slade.
My apologies. The independent member and I were just having a little chuckle about polygamous working. Can I just clarify something? Because lots of people have, I think they call them now portfolio careers, where they have multiple jobs doing different things, which if they are part-time, then that's legit, right? I thought that it was normal practice.
On the part-time initiative is we are asking employees if they have a second, third, fourth part-time job to tell the council, so we are sure they are not exceeding 37 hours, burning the candle at both ends, so to speak, and not doing the council job correct. So that's why we ask for when there's, but if it's manager's discretion, so if a person's works 18 hours for the council and 18 hours for somebody else, no problem. It's just recorded, and there's no mitigations necessary, no issues. If it's slightly different, as in you work 30 hours for us, but then you work 15 hours for somebody else, and that's night work, that might have an implication where the manager needs to understand that in a bit more detail and agree, what days are you working nights, you're not working for us in the next morning, those sort of things. So that's why we're asking on those occasions. And absolutely, although it's a contractual obligation, it has been a contractual obligation across the country, but the NFI has revealed some really stark cases. I don't know if there's a social worker in London that was working for 9 London boroughs in one go. Yeah. So and taking home 700 grand. So yes, they were required to tell their employer as a contractual arrangement, but they didn't. So that's why we're making it very explicit in this policy.
I've heard with AI agents, it's even easier. I've heard of somebody who worked in software development who had, I think it was 5 jobs, and they just set up AI agents for each of their work. Yeah, it's fabulous, very smart. But yeah, as you say, it depends on the contract. Right. It is recommended that Audit and Governance Committee approves the Council's anti-fraud and corruption policy, whistleblowing policy, declaration of interests, gifts and hospitality policy for officers, and the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act and Investigatory Powers Act policy for the 2026-27 financial year. I think, did we have a mover and seconder? Can we have a formal vote on this? Show of hands. All in favour? Unanimous. Excellent, thank you very much. Right, the last item is the appointment of independent members. So unfortunately, the term of our independent members ends at the end of March, and this is not their last meeting, but over to Nigel's going to speak about what happens next.
Yes, committee, I'd just like to run through the broad process we're going through. We are almost exclusively following exactly the same process as we did with both Sam and Lindy. So there is an advert that's gone out on the council's website. That's gone live. It went live 2 days ago, I think it was, and the expiry of the advert is the 14th of March. And the role profile and the expectations are in that, and we are inviting candidates to let us know if they're interested. We're also liaising with our comms colleagues to make sure that goes on other social media like Facebook and other, and also possible links to our business communities such as the bids and so on. So they'll get the social media posts so that their members may be able to see that. So then we'll bring that together, and we'll be, through the chair, we will be convening a panel of volunteers of the Audit and Governance Committee, probably the chair and 2 others, to conduct interviews of the any candidates that come forward, yeah. So that's the process planned. Any questions?
Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, when we did this a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago, I remember at the committee, we were asked to look for volunteers, and I suppose that could be done this evening. So those 3 names, because there was like a group of 3 councillors that did it, the chair and 2 others, and it would be useful if there were some volunteers.
Chair, I guess, Chair, if there's any volunteers to liaise
do
with you.
let me know if you're
you,
willing
yeah.
to volunteer for that. Not everyone's here. Good. Okay. Happy with that. And perhaps actually, the independent members, perhaps you might have some useful observations on that process that you might want to feed into Nigel before then. Right. With that in mind, let's draw the meeting to a close at 8:55.